This is it! You're about to be eaten by a vicious T-Rex. Any minute now. What you might not know is that you can literally outrun it. The T-Rex is a merciless hunter the size of a school bus with a strong tail and blades for teeth. But it's actually quite slow, moving at a mere 12 miles per hour. It's as fast as the gray squirrel is. You're zigzagging through the forest. The terrifying creature seems to be still miles away. But then it bursts through the jungle and is suddenly right behind you. Okay, now you can panic. The T-Rex may be a slowpoke, but its lungs are larger than yours. It means the critter could run plenty of marathons. Luckily, you reach a cave and hide inside, waiting for the dino to get bored. Oh wait, never mind. It's just broken through the rock and is back at it again. Will you make it out of this? We'll find out soon enough. A velociraptor can reach a speed of around 25 miles per hour, which means it's slightly faster than a brown bear. Putting these two head-to-head would be interesting. They're off! The velociraptor cuts through the air like a knife through butter, but the big fluff ball is galloping right behind the dino. This may be the only time we'd ever see such a race. Look, the bear is gaining on the competitor. Watch out, raptor. There are some bushes in front of them. The raptor just leaps over them and continues the race, while the bear barges straight through the bushes and stops for some yummy berries. When it's done, the raptor is long gone. Many of these dinos can be compared to modern-day chickens and ostriches in terms of speed and movement. An ostrich can reach a speed of around 45 miles per hour. That's similar to the speed of its ancient cousin, the ornithomimid. That creature even physically looked the same. Long legs? Check. A small head and a slender neck? Check. Anyway, they're running as fast as they can. The ostrich is speeding its way through the field and attempts to push the dino ostrich to the curb. But it misses and loses its step. The dino continues to run and makes it deep into the forest. Player 3 enters the game. The Compsognathus is a two-legged creature. It has the face of a regular lizard you can find in your garden, but the physique of an Olympic athlete, and plenty of razor-sharp teeth. This dino can reach a speed of 40 miles per hour, which is just on par with a greyhound. Even though it's not the biggest dino out there, it's still fearsome. This creature is merely looking for something to eat. But unfortunately, its dinner gets canceled. The ostrich and its dino cousin team up and outrun the lizard-like hunter. But it'll be back. Just wait for it. Back to Sarah. This armored beast can run at up to 20 miles per hour, which is just about the same speed as that of a brown bear. But let that poor animal have its berries. The modern-day rhino is the fastest among the mammals, weighing more than 2,200 pounds. The white rhino can reach a speed of almost 30 miles per hour. But Sarah will probably win this one. They're running side by side, with the rhino gaining momentum. Its body is more suited for running, but there are some obstacles in the way. At first, the rhino manages to break through a pile of logs and a fence, but after that, things are heating up. The rhino is slowing down. It can't break through all the barriers in its way. Meanwhile, Sarah is destroying everything in its path, as if it's on a walk in the park. And it's a good thing they're in the forest and not in the city, because the city is getting wrecked by a giant brachiosaurus. This powerful creature moves at a slow pace of 10 miles per hour, which is as fast as a pig moves. They're both at the starting line. On your mark, get set, go! And the dino wins. It was fast. The race is over. A fully grown brachiosaurus can reach 80 feet in length and grow as high as 40 feet. Just one step, and its long neck reaches the finish line. The Stegosaurus is known for having a set of plates on its back and tail, but it also has one of the smallest brains among dinos. Scientists claim that its brain is the size of a walnut. This slowpoke moves at a mere 7 miles per hour, a bit more slowly than a chicken, this modern-day dinosaur. The chicken is off to a good start. It manages to run past all the obstacles, and the Stegosaurus still hasn't figured out that it's taking part in a race. Now the chicken is just pecking the ground behind the finish line. Let's add something to make this race more interesting. There we go. The T-Rex is back and chasing the chicken and the Stegosaurus. This time, they're running for their lives. The T-Rex may be faster than them, but chasing a chicken is no easy feat. And good luck trying to take down a fully grown Stegi. They're running through the field, and the T-Rex is slowly but surely gaining on them. You're still hiding, watching the race. But suddenly, the T-Rex sees you and starts the chase. Round 2. You're running through the forest, trying to hide, but the big dino is catching up. Luckily, the Stegosaurus gets in the way and distracts the hunter. You make it out safely once again. The Dilophosaurus may be more of a bird than a lizard, but it's still quite scary. It's half the size of a T-Rex. It's best known for having 2 large crests running from its nostrils all the way to the back of its head. The black mamba is one of the most venomous snakes in Africa. It can grow up to 14 feet in length and slither at a speed of 13 to 20 miles per hour. Both creatures have almost the same speed, but one of them doesn't have arms or legs. They're both going as fast as they can, but it's hard to tell which one is winning. The dino can sprint fast, but the snake isn't that far behind. But in the end, it's the dino that takes the gold. The largest pterosaur ever is soaring above them. It's the... Oh, there's no way I'm saying its name out loud. Yeah, I mean that dinosaur. It has a wingspan of 35 feet and can fly at an incredible speed of more than 70 miles per hour. And when it glides, it can reach a speed of around 60 miles per hour. The California condor is a weird-looking bird of prey with an impressive wingspan of 10 feet. It can move as fast as the dino, and it can also rise up to 15,000 feet in the air. The largest flying bird in North America easily catches up with the dino. Both animals have great eyesight. That's why they can see other animals and dinosaurs racing far below them. They both swoop down, trying to catch the chicken, but almost become the T-Rex's meal themselves. The condor lands on the Brachiosaurus's head. The gray squirrel joins it. The pig is hiding under the dino's belly, trying not to draw attention to itself. Too late. The Velociraptor and the Dilophosaurus pop out of nowhere and start chasing it. But they can't get around the rhino and Sarah that seem to have become friends by this point. The pig is safe. Meanwhile, the ostrich and its dino cousin haven't given up and are leading the race. The Stegosaurus is trying its best to catch up with its competitors. But look, the greyhound is leading the race now. The dino bird soars into the sky, trying to find another way to be first. The Compsognathus gains on them and sprints forward, but it can't get around the rhino and Sarah. The T-Rex lets out a roar that makes all the participants move faster. They split up so that the rest of them can get forward. You pop up from your hiding spot. You're only a couple of feet away from the finish line. You see the stampede behind you and run! Humans can run at a speed of 25 miles per hour, but since you're running for your life, it feels as if you're moving at the speed of light. Good job! You've just won the race. But the animals behind your back are still running. Yeah, maybe you shouldn't stop either. Will someone tell that bear there are no more berries ahead?
A man went for a walk not far from Buenos Aires in Argentina and found something that looked like a dinosaur egg lying in the mud. When he shared his find with his family, everyone thought it was a joke, but it was actually very real. Except it wasn't a dinosaur egg, but a Glyptodont shell. These guys went extinct thousands of years ago. Some of them grew up to be the size of a small car. The Paleo-Indians, who were the ancestors of Native Americans, must have had a fun time living alongside those beasts. People keep finding similar black scaly shells, which are fossils of Glyptodonts in the Americas. These creatures thrived in South America for tens of millions of years and also spread up north. They had thick armor, called a carapace, and tough, grooved teeth for eating grass. They weren't always giant, but it looks like a colder climate before the Ice Age, with open woodlands and plenty of grass, helped them evolve. It's pretty hard to hide when you're huge, so they may have developed their fused armor to protect themselves. One of the most famous types had a long tail with spikes that it used to fight other Glyptodonts for territory or mates. Although they look similar, the ancient Glyptodonts were really different from today's armadillos. Glyptodonts had a hard, heavy armor made of fused plates, and today's armadillos have flexible armor and can roll up into a ball to protect their soft tummies. Plus, Glyptodons ate grass using their grooved teeth, and armadillos prefer insects for lunch. But despite all the differences, recent studies of their DNA showed that Glyptodons actually belonged to the armadillo family. If you think the Glyptodon was scary, just wait till you meet the giant short-faced bear. This bad guy grew to almost twice the height of Michael Jordan when it stood on its hind legs. It also weighed over 1,500 pounds, and it was able to run at the speed of over 40 miles per hour. This bear preferred meat to all other foods. Even its skull and teeth were designed for slicing through meat, and it had forward-facing eyes that gave it sharp vision. Its strong jaws and large muscles helped it crush bones to get to the nutritious marrow inside. The giant short-faced bear lived in places like Minnesota and west of the Mississippi River, all the way up to Alaska. It went after or scavenged big animals like bison, musk oxen, deer, and even ground sloths. But it eventually went extinct because its prey didn't survive the Ice Age. Today, the only living relative of the short-faced bears is the spectacled bear from South America. This guy is much smaller, about the size of a black bear, and it eats both plants and meat. Game of Thrones fans, the next one is for you. The orphaned wolf cubs adopted by the Stark family in the epic series were inspired by direwolves. Their name translates from Latin as terrible wolf. These great uncles of modern dogs were almost 5 feet from head to tail and weighed around 150 to 200 pounds. The oldest record of the direwolf is from 250,000 years ago. They adapted well to different conditions and lived pretty much all over North America, from as far north as Alaska to down into southern Mexico. They went extinct around 10,000 years ago, soon after the last ice age. They most likely just lost their source of food. The closest we have to direwolves now is the gray wolf, but don't get too upset. Scientists think they could be able to bring the direwolf back to life. They can combine intact straps of their DNA, recovered from the museum specimens and the genome of modern dogs. One animal you definitely wouldn't want to be on the de-extinction program is the saber-toothed cat. This bad guy lived in prehistoric North America and parts of South America. And nope, it's not related to modern tigers or other cats. It just went extinct. It had the title of the most fearsome Ice Age predator for a long time, until scientists found out at least one species of it was more like a kitty cat. Smilodon, by the way, Diego from Ice Age was one of those. Could only chomp down with 1/3 of the force of modern lions, but it could open its mouth at a 120 degrees angle, and it could wrestle even large prey to the ground with its powerful body, with disproportionately thick front legs and strong neck. The kitty was probably just too afraid to use its long and narrow teeth that could break easily. And one more detail. It had to have lips that could stretch well for the jaws to open wide, so it most likely drooled like a St. Bernard. Well, at least their teeth grew twice as fast as those of modern lions, and fully formed by the age of 3. The giant beavers, called castoroids, must have grown at the same rate, or so to get as big as a couch. They were about 8 feet long and weighed 200 pounds, which is as heavy as a large refrigerator. They had huge 6-inch long front teeth for gnawing, a narrow tail, and long, shaggy fur. This giant creature lived alongside mammoths and saber-toothed tigers in the woodlands of North America. Like today's beavers, the giant beaver probably spent a lot of time in the water since it was too heavy to move quickly on land. Unfortunately, we don't know for sure if giant beavers built equally giant dams. Even if they did, none of those structures survived over time. Some people think a giant beaver built a 4-foot-tall dam in Ohio, but it's just a guess. Eventually, the giant beaver disappeared, just like other big animals from the last ice age. Early human settlers in North America may have sped up its extinction, as they probably liked its thick fur and meat. By the Ice Age, Mastodons, some remote offsprings of the early elephants from Africa, crossed a land bridge that once connected Siberia and Alaska and made it to North America. Mastodons, like woolly mammoths, had thick, shaggy fur that helped them keep warm in the cold climate of the Ice Age. But unlike the mammoths, who mostly grazed, mastodons were mostly browsers. They like to eat leaves from shrubs and the lower branches of trees. Scientists often find woolly mammoth fossils together, which means they probably lived in groups, like family herds. Mastodon fossils are usually lying alone. This means they may have preferred living on their own and only came together to mate or for a short time with their young. Sadly, both mastodons and woolly mammoths went extinct around 11,000 years ago, not long after the Ice Age. Scientists think this may have happened because of changes in weather patterns, fewer food sources, and possibly early humans. They figured out that one mastodon could feed a tribe for a week and dress them for years. You can mostly find camels in deserts in places like North Africa and the Middle East now. But scientists believe they actually came from North America, especially the lands west of the Mississippi River. Fossils show that camels appeared on Earth about 44 million years ago. In 2015, a team of scientists from the University of Louisiana discovered the bones of a giant ancient camel in Oregon. This camel was between 12 and 14 feet tall, like a modern giraffe. It lived around 7 million years ago and had a long neck to help it reach high plants. About 6 million years ago, some early camels crossed into Asia over the Bering Strait land bridge. Once they arrived in Asia, these camels split into two types we know today: the Bactrian camel with 2 humps and the dromedary camel with 1 hump. You won't find wild camels in North America anymore, but some of their relatives, such as llamas, alpacas, and guanacos, still live in South America. This invisible line divides the world into 2 parts. And most animals, fish, and birds, for some reason, can't cross it. The line is called the Wallace Line, and it runs between Australia and Asia. It has its name after Alfred Russel Wallace, a British scientist and explorer who discovered it in 1859. He traveled to Asia to explore a group of islands called the Malay Archipelago. As Wallace walked through the jungles, climbed hills, and sailed on boats, he noticed something like an invisible wall. On its west side, in places like Borneo and Sumatra, he saw animals you might find in Asia. There were big rhinos munching on leaves and monkeys swinging from tree to tree. The forests were full of life, with all kinds of animals you'd expect to see in a jungle. But in places like Sulawesi and Lombok, just across the imaginary line he came up with, Wallace found animals more like the ones in Australia and colorful birds like cockatoos. The behaviors of animals differ on different sides of the Wallace Line. Some creatures are great at traveling across tough barriers like water, but others are not. For example, bats can fly across open water, but they sometimes cross the Wallace Line. On the other hand, big animals that live on land, like elephants, usually stay on just one side of the line. Some birds are shy and like to stay hidden in thick bushes and trees to avoid predators. They wouldn't feel safe flying over wide stretches of water with no place to hide. Plants don't stick to the Wallace Line as strictly as animals do, because they spread in their own unique ways, like with seeds carried by the wind, water, or animals. One plant genus, the eucalyptus, mostly stays on the Australian side. But one eucalyptus tree has made its way to the Philippines on the Asian side. Underwater, the Wallace Line doesn't matter as much. The area between the Wallace Line and Australia is called the Coral Triangle, and it's bursting with life. Now, after more than 150 years, scientists think they finally have an explanation of the Wallace Line mystery. They believe it all started about 35 million years ago, when Australia broke away from Antarctica and slowly moved up to crash into Asia. When this happened, the crash created a chain of islands called the Malay Archipelago between Asia and Australia. This caused extreme changes in the weather, which made the area very different and affected which animals could live there. Researchers used a computer model that looked at how more than 20,000 species of animals from both sides of the Wallace Line would have behaved millions of years ago. When Australia started to drift away from Antarctica, it opened up a huge new era of deep ocean around Antarctica. This is where the biggest ocean current on Earth, called the Antarctic Circumpolar Current, began to flow. This swirling current made the planet's climate much cooler and completely changed how animals could live in different places. But not all animals were affected in the same way. Indonesia stayed warm and rainy, which was perfect for animals from Asia. These creatures could hop from island to island like stepping stones and make their way toward Australia. But animals from Australia had a harder time. Over millions of years, they had gotten used to living in cooler, drier places, so the tropical islands didn't suit them as well. Scientists believe if we can see how animals adapted to big changes in weather patterns millions of years ago, we might be able to predict how today's animals will cope with a similar situation. Other scientists after Wallace also tried to describe and explain the invisible natural border between Asia and Australia, and came up with their lines. The Weber Line, for example, is in a slightly different location than the Wallace Line, between the Oriental and the Australasian faunal regions within Wallacea. It's a group of mainly Indonesian islands that are separated by deep water straits from the Asian and Australian continental shelves. They were never connected to the big continents by land, so animals that could swim, fly, or float across the water made it to these islands. That's why the creatures living there are so unique and come from both Asia and Australia. Weber's line is where the balance tips. If you go one way, most of the animals are from Asia. If you go the other way, most of the animals are from Australia. Another important migration event in the history of our planet happened in the Americas. Around 30 million years ago, South America became a separate landmass as tectonic plates moved and pulled it away from Antarctica and Africa. Once it was on its own, the animals living there started to evolve in unique ways and turned into creatures you couldn't find anywhere else in the world. There were animals we still see today, like opossums, giant rodents like capybaras and chinchillas, armadillos, anteaters, and sloths. Some of the animals from those times are now extinct. There were giant ground sloths, bigger than cars, roaming around. There were Glyptodons, which were like giant armadillos with super tough, bony shells. There were also huge, scary birds that couldn't fly, but could chase down their prey. Up in North America, animals could still travel to other parts of the world through the Bering Strait. So North America was full of different animals like deer, bison, horses, camels, and even mammoths and mastodons. They all lived alongside predators like big cats, wolves, and bears. About 3 million years ago, the continents of North and South America got connected by a strip of land called the Isthmus of Panama. It formed because the tectonic plates shifted again. Some major volcanic activity between 25 million years ago also contributed to the process. Animals started to move between North and South America, and this long process went down in history as the Great American Interchange. During the Ice Age, huge glaciers in the north grew and shrank over tens of thousands of years. When the glaciers were at their biggest, they held so much water that the sea levels dropped, and forests probably turned into wide grassy plains. So animals had the perfect conditions to cross over. Giant ground sloths were among the animals that went up north from South America, all the way to Alaska. One special kind even roamed the chilly tundras alongside woolly mammoths and caribou. Lots of North American predators decided to explore the South. There were cats like cougars, jaguars, and saber-toothed tigers with their giant teeth. Wolves, Foxes, otters, raccoons, and bears also joined the migration. The short-faced bear could stand up to 13 feet tall and weigh as much as a small car. South America also had some funny-looking animals called sanus, or South American native ungulates. These were hoofed mammals that evolved into all kinds of weird shapes, while South America was isolated. Big animals from North America, for example, relatives of elephants with strange tusks, came to the south and became some of the largest creatures around. The ancestors of today's llamas settled in the Andes Mountains, and deer, tapirs, and peccaries thrived in the forests. Animals kept moving back and forth between the continents for thousands of years. But as the Ice Age ended, many of the bigger animals, like the giant ground sloths, couldn't adapt and disappeared. It seems North American animals were better at adapting to their new homes. You can find armadillos, porcupines, and opossums from South America in North America. But many of South America's most famous animals like jaguars, llamas, and spectacled bears left North America long ago. Scientists think South America's animals, after being isolated for millions of years, had a harder time dealing with new challenges when their ecosystems changed. What do Paris Hilton and Chris Hemsworth have in common? Well, apparently, they both want to bring animals back to life. But we're not talking about making your favorite pet live forever. Nope. These celebs are actually helping a science company bring back animals that no longer exist, like the mammoth, the Tasmanian tiger, and even the iconic Dodo. If everything goes according to plan, these fascinating creatures could be walking among us again by 2028. This groundbreaking effort is led by a company called Colossal Biosciences. At this very moment, they're working on a way to revive the core genes of animals that disappeared from Earth ages ago. The idea is to replicate those genes using DNA from a close living relative. If that's all Greek to you, don't worry. We'll break it down a bit later. So, the mammoth is one of the animals they plan to bring back, and people are especially hyped about it. These incredible, massive creatures roamed parts of Africa, Europe, Asia, and North America until about 4,000 years ago. Some people might mix them up with modern elephants, but there are some key differences. For starters, they had huge curved tusks that curled inward and were used to dig for food. They also adapted to survive in freezing climates, like having 2 layers of thick fur to keep their blood warm. But mammoths and elephants do have a lot in common. The woolly mammoth shares 99.5% of its genes with its closest relative, the Asian elephant. That's huge because it means that mammoths are genetically closer to Asian elephants than Asian elephants are to African elephants, for example. The company's bold plan is to create a living, walking elephant-mammoth hybrid that looks just like the ones that used to roam the planet. This animal will look like, walk like, and even sound like a woolly mammoth. But most importantly, it'll be able to live in the same ecosystem that the mammoth left behind. If the scientists succeed in bringing back enough of these creatures, one of their big goals is to help restore the Arctic tundra ecosystem. But how do they actually plan to create the mammoth? Here's their plan. First, they need to find well-preserved samples of woolly mammoths in places like Alaska, for example. Then they'll need to sequence the mammoth's genome and the genome of its closest relative, the Asian elephant. The next step is to identify the important genes that made the woolly mammoth perfectly adapted to cold temperatures, like its shaggy hair, curved tusks, and dome-shaped cranium. In other words, they need to identify which genes make the mammoth, well, the mammoth. Now comes the interesting part. They will use top-notch gene editing tools, kind of like scissors, to cut the Asian elephant DNA and replace those spots with the mammoth sequence. This will allow them to create a new cell line and, later, an embryo. This embryo will grow inside a healthy female Asian elephant, who will be the surrogate. And just like that, a new, cold-adapted elephant will be born. Or at least, that's what scientists hope. Specialists predict that this Mammoth 2.0 could be on Earth as early as 2028. The reason it will take a while is that their gestation period is around 22 months. But if that deadline feels too far for you, there is actually a chance we could get a surprise a lot sooner. That's because some of the other animals they plan to revive have a much shorter gestation period, like Australia's thylacine, also known as the Tasmanian tiger. The company is also doing whatever it takes to give this animal a second shot at life. And the good news is that the process seems to be well advanced. Recently, the group announced that the Tasmanian tiger's genome is about 99% complete. This animal was native to the Australian mainland and the islands of Tasmania and New Guinea. A big part of the Tasmanian tiger population disappeared over 3,000 years ago. But about 5,000 of them kept roaming around until pretty recently. It's believed that the last thylacine passed away in 1936. To revive the Tasmanian tiger, scientists first need a sample of the ancient animal. So they took RNA molecules from a 110-year-old preserved head that had been kept in ethanol. The team was really lucky because it's rare to find old samples that are so well preserved, allowing scientists to use advanced DNA analysis techniques. And by that, I mean they did a full, complete analysis. By studying RNA samples from important tissue areas like the tongue, nasal cavity, brain, and eyes, experts were able to learn a bunch of interesting things about the Tasmanian tiger. They could figure out how its brain worked, and also what this beast could smell, see, and taste. By the way, these semi-nocturnal animals had a special appetite for small rodents, lizards, and birds. After finding the perfect sample, the process of reviving it will be pretty much the same as with the mammoth, but with an elephant as a DNA donor, of course. In the case of the Tasmanian tiger, its closest living relative is a small marsupial called the fat-tailed dunnart. Even though this animal is small, it is a ferocious carnivore. So experts believe the whole DNA editing process will work just fine with its sequence. Their goal is to turn a fat-tailed dunnart cell into a thylacine cell. To accomplish that, they did more than 300 unique genetic changes into a dunnart cell. So there is no doubt they're pushing all the boundaries to make the dream of reviving animals a reality. This project also plans to revive the iconic dodo. You know, that funny-looking bird from the paradisiacal island of Mauritius in the Indian Ocean? And here, things get a little trickier, since we don't know much about this creature, which has origins that go back about 23 million years. Basically, the only clues we have about what dodos looked like when they were alive come from a handful of drawings, paintings, and written descriptions from the 17th century. But since those pictures are all pretty different from each other, and only a few of them were based on real live dodos, we're still not 100% sure what they actually looked like. And as for how they behaved, well, we don't know much about that either. That's why reviving this long-absent legend will be super interesting and really enlightening. The sample they used to extract an old dodo genome came from a skull in the collection of the Natural History Museum of Denmark. And the dodo's closest living relative, which will provide the host cells, is the Nicobar pigeon, a gray bird with colorful features found in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands in India. If everything goes smoothly, in a couple of years we might see the fabulous and iconic dodo with our own eyes. Reviving animals might sound impossible, but science and technology together can be a real game changer. Not only by protecting today's animals, but also by restoring species that disappeared from the planet long ago. Actually, we've already pulled this off. A wild goat called the bucardo, also known as the Pyrenean ibex, went extinct in the year 2000. But 3 years later, scientists managed to bring it back to life, using a method pretty similar to what we've talked about in this video. It took 57 tries, but one of them finally worked, and a bucardo clone was born. Unfortunately, the animal only lived for 10 minutes. You might think that wasn't a success, but it was actually a huge step forward in the whole animal revival field. Now, specialists can only hope the project to bring back the dodo, the mammoth, and the Tasmanian tiger go a bit better.
Harvard biologists have uncovered a truly bizarre frog species that sports extendable claws, much like those of a cat. This hairy frog breaks its own bones to produce claws that puncture through its toe pads, likely when it feels threatened. Some salamanders push their ribs through their skin to create protective barbs, but scientists have seen nothing quite like this claw mechanism before. 9 out of 11 frogs in this genus have this feature, and most of them live in Cameroon. A bee's life doesn't have to end after it stings you. Some of them can carefully take out the stinger without passing away later. The bee starts circling around until it loosens and takes out the barbed stinger. After that, it just flies away without leaving any marks on your skin. Unlike wasps, which are carnivorous and can be aggressive, bees are mostly peaceful creatures. They either stay in their hive or move from flower to flower, helping to spread life on Earth because they're crucial for pollination. For bees, stinging is a last resort because it means demise for them, so they can choose not to do it to save themselves. You probably have heard that a salamander can regrow its tail if it loses it completely. Well, Mexican tetra, also known as the blind cavefish, goes further and can grow back its heart. Well, sort of. It won't get a new, full heart overnight, but it can regenerate its tissues. Scientists decided it could be useful for us humans, as they're studying these fish, to see what's their secret, and why not all animals can play the same trick. Thorny devil dragon lizard surely agrees with the proverb, 2 heads are better than 1. The knob growing from its back serves as a false head to trick whoever is after it. They also have a special camouflage coloring and a scary spiny body for extra protection. And if it doesn't sound cool enough, they also drink with their feet. Now that's a handy feature when you live in the scorching hot desert. The water goes directly from their feet to their mouths through little grooves between scales. Meanwhile, some flies have eyes on stalks. It might sound strange, but those stalks are super useful. First off, they give the fly amazing vision, so good they can even peek around corners. Secondly, these stalks can be used as tools to push away rivals, and the longer the stalks and the wider the eyes are set, the more attractive the male fly appears to females. It's like their way of showing off that they're strong and have good genes. Spiders have some seriously awesome biological tricks up their sleeves, or legs. Spinning giant webs of incredible strong silk to catch bad guys is a real superpower, and Darwin's bark spider is especially good at it. This spider can weave massive webs that stretch across entire bodies of water, with anchor strands that reach up to 82 feet long. Scientists were curious about how strong this spider silk really is, so they put it to the test. They discovered that Darwin's bark spider silk is twice as tough as any other silk and 10 times stronger than Kevlar, which is an ideal body armor material. The web can handle insane amounts of kinetic energy before breaking, ensuring that no tiny insect or a villain can escape its web. The real Hulk of the animal world is the male horned dung beetle. It is the strongest animal in the world. This little powerhouse can pull 1,140 times its own body weight. Its secret to success is its desire to find a partner. Female dung beetles dig cozy tunnels under piles of dung for mating. When more than one male shows up, the competitors lock horns and wrestle each other out of the tunnel. Smaller beetles also have a chance though, as they can move faster and slip into the tunnel more easily. Meanwhile, an alpine ibex has the superpower of defying gravity. Yep, it can scale steep rock walls just to get a lick of salt to complement its vegetarian diet. It's like when you storm the nearest grocery store for some late-night snacks. Back in the animal world, ibexes use concrete as an unconventional salt lick. Animals can't live without salt. They need it for their nerves and muscles to function properly. Wild goats have these rock climbing skills thanks to the elastic and rubbery pads on their hooves. They help them grip the rocks, and a hard, sharper outer hoof edge hooks into the tiny rough spots on the rock surface. Now, the pistol shrimp is just 1.5 inches long, but it can snap its claws at a speed of 60 miles per hour. That creates a bubble in the water that forms a vacuum, and it sends a powerful water pulse that can stun prey. The snap is so intense that it generates a noise of 218 decibels, louder than a gunshot, and a temperature that is as hot as the sun's surface. There's even a brief flash of light. Some scientists are thinking of creating a mechanical version of the pistol shrimp to use in medical practice or for a new type of compression engine. Now, if you go hiking in the trails of the Pacific Northwest, keep an eye on the ground and any decaying trees for some bright yellow spots moving along. These are the keels of a dark centipede about 2 inches long. If you pick one up, it will curl into a spiral and release hydrogen cyanide, giving off a strong almond scent. This amount isn't enough to seriously mess up a human. It can just stain your skin or give you an uncomfortable feel if you're sensitive. So be sure to wash your hands after handling one. But the same amount can take down a bird or a rodent. Speaking of birds, crows can count vocally up to 4. They're a lot like human toddlers when it comes to learning to count and quickly identify the number of objects they see. Scientists trained 3 carrion crows to make a certain number of caws between 1 and 4 when they showed them a specific symbol or audio cue. All 3 birds mastered the task like pros, with some minor mistakes like 1 caw too many or too few. Crows can also plan ahead and communicate with each other in a structured way. Cowbirds, on the other hand, have secret passwords they use to recognize each other. They're a type of parasite bird, something like a cuckoo, and they lay their eggs in other bird species' nests. This means the little cowbirds can't learn their real parents' calls and would have trouble as adults to find a mate of their kind. That's why they have an inner mechanism where they recognize their species singing like some sort of secret password that only they know. Meanwhile, ghost crabs growl when they're around creatures they don't like or find threatening. They first show claws to intruders in their personal space to make them feel unwelcome. If that's not enough, they'll go for fearsome growling noises, like dogs. That sound is coming from rubbing their 3 elongated, hard teeth inside their stomach. Teeth in your stomach. Ghost crabs make the same noise when they're grinding up food. When a puffin feels like it could use a good scratch, nothing can stop it from solving the problem. Researchers notice these birds pick up a small wooden stick to itch themselves. The authors think puffins might need sticks to knock off seabird ticks. Looks like it's more effective than using its own beak. There's an Indian elephant named Koshik who lives in South Korea and can imitate words just like parrots do. Koshik can pronounce the Korean words for yes, no, sit, lie down, and 4 other words. He puts his trunk inside his mouth and shakes it while exhaling to change the tone and pitch of the sounds he produces. If you can whistle with your fingers in the mouth, it's a lot like that.
Every species on Earth, you, me, and that nasty neighbor of yours, is destined to go extinct someday. Just like what happened to the woolly mammoths and saber-toothed tigers. Stats aren't bright. Scientists say that 99% of all animals that ever lived are now extinct. Hey, what's that look on your face? Going extinct is not the end of the story. Now listen up. Mammoths might make the greatest comeback ever and even be the key to saving humanity. Nope, they won't give away free money so that we don't have to work anymore, but they can sorta help the weather situation on our planet. In the Arctic tundra, there's this ground called permafrost. It's like soil in the form of ice. Soil turns permafrost when it stays super cold for 2 years straight. But now, permafrost is actively thawing out, and it's bad news for, well, everyone. Because while thawing, it releases a lot of carbon into the air. But what if we had large animals like mammoths there today? They would churn up the soil. The ground would freeze more deeply in winter. And then, in summer, a layer of grass would help keep the ground cool and prevent the permafrost from melting. Some scientists think that's a great solution. So now there's a company in the US that's trying to bring mammoths back to life. Okay, you got me. Not actual mammoths, but a sort of hybrid between an elephant and 1% mammoth DNA. It would be a northern elephant. Getting mammoth DNA is easier than you might think. They actually only went extinct about 10 to 14,000 years ago. Scientists are hoping to have their first elephant-mammoth hybrid by 2027. Let's hope it doesn't turn into a real-life Jurassic Park. Ah, Australia. A nightmarish place and a home to the most fascinating creatures on Earth. But here, the sad fate befell the Tasmanian tiger, also known as thylacine. Don't mix it up with the Tasmanian devil. That one is living and thriving. Nope, the thylacine was a marsupial predator that used to chill in Australia, South Tasmania, and New Guinea. It was a nocturnal who preyed on other marsupials, like kangaroos. In the 30s, the farmers suddenly claimed that thylacines were eating their livestock. Looking back at it now, that was probably an exaggeration. But humans started to hunt poor thylacines until they were all gone. And then it turned out that hunting away the important predator isn't the brightest idea. Who would have thought? You see, thylacines kept things in check by eating bad animals. So once they disappeared, the Australian wildlife was basically doomed. 35% of total mammal extinctions on Earth happened here. That's an awful world record. I know it sounds gloomy, but hey, maybe we can fix this. Remember that company we mentioned? It wants to bring back the thylacine too. Luckily, many thylacine embryos are still preserved in jars, like some creepy pickles. If we bring them back to Tasmania, this could help revive the entire ecosystem. Would you be happy to see them back in the wild? Me too. And I would also be happy to see you hitting those like and subscribe buttons so you can keep up with amazing facts all year round. We also have some huge dreams about tiny creatures. Take a trip to Mount Hotham Ski Resort in Victoria, Australia, and here you can find the mountain pygmy possum, a tiny bundle of cuteness. These guys are super rare. We even thought that they were extinct. All we had was their fossils. But then, some skiers spotted a possum in a log pile at the ski lodge in 1966. Imagine suddenly making a great discovery while chilling on vacation. These little possums can spend 7 months of the year sleeping under the snow. They wake up occasionally to eat some stored food, and then they wake up in the spring to eat even more, find a mate, and go back to sleep again. What a relatable fella. Since they've made it into this video, you can guess they're pretty endangered. There are less than 2,000 left in the wild, all because their current homes don't fit them that well. But hooray, we can help them too. You see, their ancestors lived in lowland forests about 20 million years ago. So maybe mountain possums could live better if we moved them there? Of course, we can't just take them to the woods and expect them to survive. Instead, scientists want to slowly release possums into the forest and check up on how they get on with it. Let's hope these cute creatures will adapt to woodland life. The southern gastric-brooding frog, also called the platypus frog, was quite a unique creature. It was discovered in 1972 in Queensland, Australia. Back then, this fella shocked the scientists with its super weird birthing practices. Check this out. The mother frog swallows her eggs, turning her stomach into the womb. Then she doesn't eat at all for 6 weeks straight. I could never. Meanwhile, the tadpoles hatch in her stomach, start to grow, and eventually get so big that the mom literally has to breathe through her skin. And then she literally spews out her offspring left and right. Bleh. But this insane process is a great evolutionary achievement, which is why it drew everyone's attention. But the wonder didn't last long. By the mid-80s, all known species of these frogs vanished from their natural habitats. Why? We have no idea. There are many theories, but almost no evidence to back them up. In any case, over the years, these guys officially became extinct. But it all changed in 2013. Scientists started a groundbreaking project named the Lazarus Project. Now they want to resurrect these frogs to learn cool cloning techniques from them. Are you guys ready to copy their genetic preservation method? Yeah, me neither. But let's dive deeper. Literally go in the water. Meet the Coelacanth. This creature lived in the oceans back when the dinosaurs roamed our planet, and didn't even notice the asteroids. These guys are the Methuselahs of the sea. They can live up to 100 years, and they don't even start thinking about leaving offspring until they're around 55. At least they've got plenty of time to live for themselves. We actually thought this creature had gone extinct about 65 million years ago. But then, the first Latimeria specimen was discovered off the coast of South Africa in 1938. Now they're known as living fossils. And these fish are enormous. They weigh around 200 pounds. They're also super stylish, with those lobe-fished paddles that make them look like disco balls. Oh, and they're great aerialists. Thanks to those versatile fins, they can even do headstands and swim belly up. The Coelacanth is also a bit of a homebody. It's not very energetic and likes to live in underwater caves during the day, only coming out at night to snack on smaller fish and squid. Another animal who's literally me. Now we're trying our best to preserve this species, and I won't be surprised if it outlives us all. And finally, let's talk about the largest and most awkwardly looking flightless bird from New Zealand, the South Island Takahe. The tale of the Takahe started way back in the Middle Ages. Humans accidentally hunted them all away, and by the late 19th century, it seemed there were none of them left. But then, they were rediscovered in New Zealand in 1948. Poor guys did all they could to hide from us in the mountains, but we still got them. But it's different now. Since then, we've been trying our best to save them from extinction. There's a Takahe recovery program going on, and it shows great results. They managed to greatly boost the number of birds in the wild. As of 2023, the Takahe population has grown to around 500 birds. They're now considered nationally vulnerable, not nationally critical. It's a little progress, but progress nonetheless. Let's keep it up. If you're being approached by an aggressively looking dog, start yelling and screaming. It'll show your dominance and spook the animal off. Yes, this is a widespread myth, and no, it won't help you if you meet a canine that looks as if it's going to attack you. The best course of action in this rather scary situation is to stand still and avoid direct eye contact with the animal. You shouldn't run. It may only encourage the dog to start chasing you. If the animal attacks, drop to the ground and curl into a ball, protecting your head and neck with your hands. But what if you come across another, much more dangerous representative of the canine family? A wolf? Running away won't save your life. Wolves are much faster than humans, especially in the forest. Plus, as soon as you start running, the wolf's prey drive will immediately kick in. Instead, maintain eye contact with the animal at all times and never ever turn your back on it. While trying to escape, make sure the wolf remains in front of you. If the predator ends up behind you, its hunting instincts may come into play, so slowly back away while facing the animal. You might have heard that if you've been bitten by a snake, you should apply garlic to the bite area. Another misconception. Garlic has absolutely no effect on snake venom. Instead, try to remember the color and shape of the snake. It can later help doctors treat the bite and figure out what antivenom is needed. Also, remain still and as calm as possible. It can slow down the spread of venom. And, of course, immediately seek medical help. If you see a bear, fall down on the ground and pretend to have passed away. Unfortunately, it doesn't always work this way. First of all, you need to show the animal that you're not prey. Do not make any high-pitched noises and don't scream. This way, you may agitate the bear even more. If you wave your arms, do it slowly. If you decide to talk some sense into the bear, do it in a calm and low voice. Without taking your eyes off the bear, start to move sideways. It won't let you trip and go down. Do not rush or run away. Although at first sight, bears may look clumsy and heavy-footed, they're surprisingly good runners. Plus, these animals love chasing their prey. That's why if a bear charges after you, stop moving altogether. There's a misconception that bees can only sting once. But in reality, the problem is that honeybee stingers are barbed and can easily catch on their victim's skin. The stinger gets stuck. The bee can't free itself and doesn't usually survive such an accident. You need to remember that bees will protect their hives no matter what. And they can sting you even if you're just walking by. Dark colors can make bees more aggressive, since such hues make people look like their natural enemies. That's why if you're dressed in a black t-shirt, your chances of being stung by these insects are higher. If a swarm of bees is following you, hide in an enclosed or dark space. The lack of proper lighting will throw the insects off your track. Similar rules apply to wasp encounters. One of the worst mistakes you can make is wearing your long hair down and wearing dark clothes. Wasps are attracted to dark-moving objects, and your clothes and hair certainly fit this description. So if you suspect you may come across some wasps, put on some light-colored clothes and keep your hair tied up in a ponytail or bun. Contrary to popular belief, bathing a wasp sting in vinegar or baking soda won't help. Instead, apply some ice to the affected area. Gorillas are called the kings of the jungle, and not without a reason. They are leaders that tend to protect their family and land. They won't normally attack you if you behave obediently. So, upon meeting a gorilla, sit down. This way, you won't look large and threatening, towering over the animal. Try not to make loud noises and avoid direct eye contact. In case of an attack or approach, curl into a ball. Gorillas are proud animals. As a rule, they won't attack the weak and defenseless. Surprisingly, a wild kangaroo can pose a serious threat to a person. But it will only happen if you enter the animal's territory and it feels threatened. To avoid a conflict, cough. It's not a joke. Your coughs should be short and quiet. The kangaroo will consider it a sign of disease, and there's a chance it won't attack you. After that, back away slowly. This way, you will look smaller, therefore less threatening. Don't turn away and run. It will only provoke the animal. Remember that kangaroos are perfect jumpers, capable of catching up with you in a few moments. Of course, we must talk about sharks. The good news is that out of several hundred shark species existing on Earth, only about a dozen attack humans. If a shark gets interested in you, it will be extremely hard to break away. To not attract sharks, prevent blood or any other body fluids from getting into the water, sharks can feel smells at great distances. Also, when you go swimming, take off shiny jewelry or other reflective objects. Sharks are attracted to shiny things because they mistake them for fish scales. Don't turn your back on this predator, and don't try to escape in panic. You will look like prey this way. Move slowly. Hitting the animal in its eyes and gills can only make it angrier and more determined to attack. Instead, start making bubbles. They're too noisy for sharks, and these animals don't like them. If you encounter a wild boar, it'll be a mistake to try to escape the animal by jumping into the water. Boars are actually good swimmers and can easily follow you if they feel threatened. Instead, start whistling or singing if you spot a wild boar walking nearby. If you've encountered a lion, maintain eye contact with the animal. Don't turn your back and don't move your eyes away. It will give the predator some time to attack. Try to look more massive than you actually are. Lift your arms and jack it up. If you look big and threatening, the animal will try to avoid the confrontation. speak to the lion in a reasonably loud and confident voice. Such behavior isn't typical for a victim. You will baffle the predator, and it will perceive you as an irritating presence, which is better to stay away from. Elephants are clever and quite friendly animals, but they have been known to attack people. This is especially true about female elephant mothers with babies. If you have come across an elephant, pay attention to its body language. If the trunk is curled and the ears are pulled back, it means it might try to attack and crush you. If the animal approaches, don't run. Try to find something to serve as a barrier between you and the elephant. It can be a stone or a tree. Rhinoceroses have bad eyesight. That's why it's easy to frighten them and provoke them to attack. These animals' speed can reach 37 miles per hour, which is why it's really difficult to outrun them. The most foolproof way to escape from a rhinoceros is to hide behind a tree. It's a serious obstacle for the animal. Also, it's unlikely to follow you through bushes or high grass. Hippos may seem cute, but this image is very misleading. These animals can be extremely dangerous. Despite their weight, hippopotamuses can run at a speed of 18 to 28 miles per hour. Plus, it's quite easy to make them angry. So if the weather's hot, try not to come close to bushes. The level of water lowers during the drought season, and hippos hide in tall grass. To make the animal leave you alone, climb a tree, a rock, or a steep hill. Wait there until it goes away. Despite the widespread opinion, bulls react to movement, not the color red, or any other color. That's why if a bull is running at you, stay straight and still. Use your hat, t-shirt, or other clothes you have at hand as bait. When the bull runs up close enough, throw this object as far away from you as possible. The bull will change the direction and follow this new target.
I have news for you. Rats are ticklish. Well, I thought it was news. Anyway, they have a so-called laugh center in their midbrain, and it activates when someone tickles the animals or when they engage in some fun and playful activities. Scientists discovered this in 2016 after tickling the rodents on their bellies and listening to their squeaky giggles. Now, hummingbirds are the only birds we know about that can fly backward. They mostly do it when they want to move away from flowers. And here's an animal that can't go backward, a kangaroo. They can hop around and cross great distances, but the structure of their strong rear feet and big tails prevent them from walking backwards. Narwhals are those weird creatures that look like some sort of sea unicorns. That horn on their head is not a tusk. It's a giant tooth that sticks out through the upper lip of male narwhals. This tooth is probably one of the tools that plays a role in attracting ladies. Now, flamingos are not actually pink. They're born gray, but throughout their life, they eat lots of algae and other foods that contain a red-orange pigment we know as beta-carotene, like in carrots. This pigment gets broken down and ends up in their skin and feathers, which is what makes them pink. They need to eat a lot of such food to stay like that, though. If we humans wanted to change our skin color, we wouldn't be able to eat enough food rich in beta-carotene to really turn pink, or in our case, maybe even orange. Sloths are really slow. All the jokes and memes about them are true, but they're also very skilled swimmers, and they move in the water around 3 to 4 times quicker than on land. They can do breaststroke just like people, and it's an important skill for them to have because they're tropical animals that mostly live in jungles, and those areas are often flooded. Tigers are the biggest members of the feline family, even bigger than lions. And no tiger has the same set of stripes. Their coat is actually a camouflage that comes in handy when they need to find a good spot where their prey won't see them. Interestingly, their skin is striped too, not just the coat. Their stripes are as unique as our fingerprints. Now, even though they look kind of funny and innocent, you wouldn't want to bother a platypus. These wild animals are some of the few mammal species that can poison you. They have spurs on the tips of their back feet that can release venom. It's not potent enough to pose a life threat, but the sting can still be very painful and can cause swelling and other issues. When a ladybug needs to defend itself against potential predators, it starts bleeding from its knees. Now, it's not actual blood coming out of its joints. It's a certain chemical that smells bad and, therefore, repels predators. They have another mechanism that helps them survive in the harsh animal kingdom, their specific color. Predators really don't like the combinations of bright colors, such as red, orange, and black, because they know that creatures colored this way can taste awful. Roosters can get extremely noisy in the morning, but they don't go deaf because they don't even hear how loud their crowing can be. What keeps them safe is special built-in noise protection plugs. Hens have the same system that reduces the risk of hearing loss too. Not only do they have this protection, but they can also regrow cochlear hair ears if they get damaged in only a couple of days. Owls don't have eyeballs. They have something that's more like eye tubes, and they can't move them back and forth like we do with our eyeballs, which is why these birds have incredibly flexible necks. They're able to rotate their heads 270 degrees. For comparison, humans can only manage 180. That's why owls have a specific system of blood vessels in their heads. It delivers fresh blood to the brain if the bird turns its head too quickly and cuts off circulation. Just keep swimming. You may remember how Dory the blue tang sang this in Finding Nemo. Dory wasn't a shark, but that's a message some shark species need to take literally. Mako sharks, great whites, whale sharks, and some other kinds need to keep swimming. Otherwise, they'll stop breathing. We use our lungs for breathing, and some sharks use a method called buccal pumping. This means they swim with their mouths open. That way, they allow water to flow through their gills and thus extract oxygen. The most dangerous animal on our planet isn't a bear, a shark, or some toothy tiger. It's something way smaller, the mosquito. Not only is it extremely irritating, but it also transfers serious diseases such as yellow fever, malaria, or dengue fever. Annually, hundreds of thousands of people don't survive the battle with those diseases. Mosquitoes also outnumber every other creature across the globe, apart from termites and ants. Grizzly bears are incredibly strong animals with a bite powerful enough to crush a bowling ball. That's why you won't see them allowed in bowling alleys. Despite that, they're mostly light eaters. They're strong enough to make a meal out of whatever they come across, including a bison, moose, or elk, but they still like to munch on their fruits, nuts, berries, and even a small unfortunate mouse that gets lost and ends up in the predator's mouth. The inland taipan is the most venomous snake on the planet. We know it as the western taipan. It lives in Australia. Just one bite has enough venom to turn out fatal for at least 100 fully grown humans. And it can also do the job within only half an hour if you don't have anything to treat the bite right away. They say these snakes are mostly shy and they mind their own business. But, like other animals, they will attack if they feel threatened or provoked. There's a kind of turtle that can stay alive for months under the ice by breathing through its behind. When it gets colder, some animals can't find safe places to stay, so they must survive harsh winter conditions wherever they are. And while bees get cozy in their nests and bears sleep in caves, painted turtles stay in their ponds that freeze over. Since the ice limits their access to air, they extract oxygen directly from the water and breathe through their behinds. Yes, that would be handy. It's well known that ravens are incredibly intelligent animals. They're excellent at solving problems, but it seems they also have impressive social intelligence. They're very in tune with their feelings as well as the emotions of their mates. If one raven in the group feels pessimistic, it's likely to bring the others down too. A real buzzkill. When they see a bird that doesn't like certain food and expresses it in a very vivid way, they lose interest in their own food as well. The pistol shrimp is one of the loudest animals in the world, even though it's tiny, only about 3/4 of an inch long. When it senses food, it opens its large claw that can grow as long as half its body length and lets some water in. Then it snaps the claw shut extremely fast, which shoots out a very strong jet of bubbles. These bubbles can stun or even finish the prey the shrimp is trying to catch. And when the bubbles pop, it produces a snapping sound, louder than anyone would expect. Crocodiles are even scarier than we thought, because many of them can gallop like horses. They probably inherited this ability from their ancient ancestors, who were as small as cats, had long legs, and could run at speeds of about 11 miles per hour. Smaller crocodiles probably gallop when something's after them, but caimans and alligators obviously don't need to use this skill. It's you who's more likely to gallop away when you see them.
It turns out, starfish don't have a head. They are the head. When you first look at a starfish, you think it's got 5 arms. Scientists have always been curious about why starfish look like this, and in particular, where their heads are. Most animals, including us, have bodies that are bilaterally symmetrical, meaning you can split them down the middle and get 2 matching sides. But starfish, along with sand dollars and sea anemones, are different. They're radially symmetrical, meaning their bodies have identical parts spread out from the center. Starfish, or sea stars, are special because they have this 5-way symmetry, and you can divide them into 5 equal parts. To make this discovery, scientists used a technique called RNA tomography, which helps study genes. They focused on the genes controlling the outer layer, including the nervous system. Surprisingly, the genes associated with the head were active in the starfish's head and its arms. Yet, genes linked to the body trunk were hardly active. This suggests that starfish have a unique separation between their head and body. The study sparked new questions about how these creatures evolved and what their ancestors with trunks might have been like based on their fossil records. It also showed that genes active in the head of an acorn worm were also active in a starfish's skin, covering its entire body. These genes are the most active at the center of each arm, changing towards the arm's end to resemble genes found in the rear of other animals. Starfish lack genes for a torso. All this challenges traditional views on starfish anatomy. There's a rumor about Paul McCartney recording an ultrasonic whistle for his Shetland sheepdog at the end of the Beatles song, A Day in the Life. Dogs can hear ultrasonic sounds since their hearing ability is incredible. To move just one of their ears, dogs need to involve 18 muscles. It allows them to swiftly locate the origin of sounds, and it's another skill where they outshine us. Their awesome ears sometimes shadow their noses. Dogs' sense of smell is up to 100,000 times more acute than that of humans. While humans have around 5 million scent receptors, a bloodhound boasts up to 300 million. Another study proves that dogs and bottlenose dolphins may share a fascinating similarity with humans. They call out the names of loved ones when they become separated. This makes them the first non-human animals to do so. The research has uncovered that dolphins copy one another's signature whistles when they're separated from close pals. In the Sarasota Dolphin Research Program recordings, pairs of dolphins were held in separate nets, but they could still communicate with each other. Turns out, some of their chit-chats were mimicking the unique whistles of their dolphin buddies. Next up, we have flamingos with their peculiar dining habits. You often see them feeding with their heads positioned upside down. This distinctive behavior is linked to the anatomy of their mouths and the mechanics of maneuvering their long, elegant necks into the water. These birds are skilled filter feeders, employing their tongues as effective sieves to capture food. When a flamingo lowers its neck beneath the water, it positions its mouth essentially upside down. Then the bird closes its mouth and skillfully propels water through comb-like extensions on its beak. It also utilizes its tongue to expel the water while retaining all the gathered food. If you've watched the movie My Octopus Teacher on Netflix, you might already know that octopuses can bond with humans. But this time, we'll only focus on the anatomy of this creature. Octopuses have 3 hearts. One heart pumps blood throughout the body, and the other 2 tag teams send that blood to the animal's gills. Octopuses also have 9 brains. Each of their 8 tentacles has its very own mini-brain. These mini-brains allow each tentacle to move independently at lightning speed. There's a ninth brain in the mix, and this one oversees the entire octo-nervous system. Opossums are intelligent, in a way, too. They're known for pretending to pass away when their life is threatened. When they face predators, opossums attempt to intimidate their foes by showing their teeth, hissing, and growling. Yet, when these tactics fall short, opossums resort to shutting their eyes, collapsing onto their side, and pretending to have passed away. To look more convincing, an opossum might drool, let its tongue hang out, and even excrete waste to enhance the illusion of a sudden demise. Remarkably, opossums can uphold this state for several hours, waiting until they're confident that the threat is gone. Monkeys can be loud when calling one another, but a howler monkey's shout can travel approximately 3 miles in specific situations. Males are usually louder than females. The thing is, the sound is created by pulling air through a space in an enlarged bone in the animal's throat. This bone is larger in males compared to females, and that's why males sound louder. Polar bears have black skin beneath all that fur. Their fluffy white coat is actually translucent. It only seems white because it bounces back visible light. The skin itself is jet black. These creatures are also impressive when it comes to swimming. They can hit speeds of up to 6 miles per hour in the water, which is pretty fast for such big creatures. They can swim for miles and keep going for hours. Their big paws are designed for swimming. They use them to paddle through the water while their back legs stay straight and act like a rudder, helping them steer. Since we visited polar bears, we might as well add a romantic fact about penguins here. Male Gentoo and Adelie penguins put themselves out there with proposals. They offer their potential mates precious pebbles, essential for building nests in the harsh Antarctic landscape. If the lady penguin accepts the pebble, they're in it for life, bonded and ready to mate. Another study has found that our adorable house cats share more than 95% of their genetic makeup with tigers. These little furballs also mimic many behaviors of their wild relatives, like marking territory with scents and the classic, stalking and pouncing during playtime. Biologically though, a cat's brain is kind of similar to a human's. We share identical emotional regions in our brains. Cats can also make up to 100 different sounds. Owls have eye tubes or cylinders. Their rod-shaped eyes don't do the eyeball moving. Our eyes can move in almost all directions. Owls have to make a full body or full head turn to look around, all because of night vision. To master the art of seeing in the dark, they need large corneas that can scoop up every bit of light. Most nighttime critters, like slow lorises or tarsiers, have enormous eyes to get the job done. But owls have small skulls on their agenda, so those big eyes couldn't swell out. Cockroaches are notorious for their survival skills, and a key reason is their unique brain structure. They have 2 brains, one in their head and a more basic one near their abdomen. They're so hard to get because these critters are incredibly quick to react. They have tiny hairs on their rear end that can feel the slightest breeze. When these hairs twitch, the cockroach doesn't waste time. It instantly switches to escape mode. Research shows that a cockroach can react in just 1/20th of a second. So by the time we turn on the light or grab something to target it, the cockroach is already speeding off. Cats can have dreams. Sometimes you can see your cat's whiskers twitching or its legs kicking while it's sleeping. This doesn't necessarily mean your pet is having a nightmare. We can look at human sleep to get a clue about what's happening with our feline friends. During REM sleep, our brains get super active, almost like when we're awake. That's also the prime time for dreaming. REM sleep is named this way because of the quick movements the eyes make under the eyelids. But while our eyes might be moving, the rest of our body stays still. The focus is on what's going on in our minds. This is true for cats too. Besides an occasional twitch, cats usually don't move much when they're asleep.
Oh, capybaras. I bet your social media is flooded with these adorable creatures enjoying a hot bath, looking like they couldn't care less about the world's problems. Yeah, I get it. The world's largest rodents don't exactly look too sharp with that zen vibe going on, but they're actually pretty clever. Studies reveal they're even smarter than 2-year-old kids and average dogs. The thing is, while dogs can be trained, capybaras are independent thinkers with their own unique way of doing things. So if you ask them to do a rollover, they'll probably think, "Oh, not again," and come up with their own quirky way to pull it off. Or they just might decide not to do it at all. Another thing that adds to their intelligence is their complex communication. Capybaras whistle when they sense danger, purr when they're happy, chirp when they're in a group, and even do teeth chattering when excited about food. The list goes on. Just imagine what they'd do if they suddenly gained human-level intelligence overnight. With their unique vocal abilities, capybaras could make fantastic voice actors, creating sounds beyond human capability and adding realism to animals and movies. Ultimately, getting back to the fact that the capybara in Disney's Encanto doesn't have a voice. Capybaras could even host swimming championships, like they're the Michael Phelps of the animal kingdom. Alright, maybe I got carried away a bit, but they do move with way more grace underwater than they do on land. Oh, and remember when we chatted about capybaras and hot baths? It's not just for showing off on social media. They genuinely love it because it helps with treating skin conditions and retaining heat afterwards. So, with a bit more intelligence, they'd probably take control of hot springs and jacuzzis, kicking the humans out. Picture signs that read "Capybaras Only," handwritten by capybaras themselves. You know when you're feeling down and out of the blue your cat saunters over, purring and rubbing against you to lift your spirits? It's not like these kitties have a crystal ball for predicting gloomy days, but cats do have this uncanny power to sense their owner's mood. That's because picking up on others' emotions is crucial for animals that live in social groups. Well, cats do pick up on their owner's usual behaviors, so they can tell when something is off and their human is acting differently. Now imagine this sixth sense paired with human-level intelligence. Cats would open their own Whisker Wellness Center, providing theropods with perfection. If you're lost for words during the therapy session, no worries. They can just purr in your lap for an hour, but they'll still charge you for that. Cat therapists wouldn't even need little notepads to write down patients' complaints because they have an excellent memory. Just like humans, cats find it easier to remember significant or extreme experiences, such as the time they got stuck in a closet or when you bought them the first lick-and-lap treat. With impressive procedural and spatial memory, cats can recall and retain these memories for 10 years or more. Whether they're happily crashing down a hill or engaged in a bamboo mukbang, there's something about pandas that we just can't look away from. YouTube is brimming with thousands of videos featuring these oddly enchanting creatures rolling around, backward, and even sideways. Theories suggest that they roll for a bunch of reasons, like regulating body temperature or waking up muscles that have fallen asleep after sitting for long periods. But, well, there's another crucial factor – laziness. I mean, well, why walk when you can use gravity and roll down hills, right? If pandas were as smart as humans, they could pioneer the world's first school for perfect jobs for the lazy, such as working on motocross circuits, rolling all the way down to check if the ramp's slope is just right. They would also be the champs at detecting when people lie, so they could do a pretty good job as lawyers, HR professionals, or negotiators. I know. We often think of them as black and white, clumsy creatures, and not exactly protagonists from Lie to Me. But after years of living among humans, they've learned how to distinguish between angry and happy human expressions. So, with a human-level brain, they could easily become experts in reading micro-expressions. What would you say if I asked you which sea creature is the smartest? I bet dolphin was the first thing that came to your mind. Yeah, they're pretty clever. For example, dolphins have this cool move where they use sponges to protect their noses while fishing, and they learned how to do that 200 years ago. But do you know who figured out how to use tools way before dolphins? Yep, sea otters. I know we often get distracted by how stinking cute they look floating on their backs, and it's easy to forget those tiny hands and brains can do some insane stuff. Thanks to their forepaws, equipped with retractable claws and tough pads for gripping, sea otters can rub, twist, pull, or tear things with surprising skill. So don't be surprised when you see them doing crazy stuff like hiding their favorite toys in their bellies or helping people clean pools. These behaviors are really fun to watch, but they've also learned some impressive tricks in the wild, like using rocks as hammers to crack open shellfish. In a world where these water pups are as smart as humans, they'd probably own 5-star seafood restaurants around the world. I mean, they've got mad skills handling the tough shells of creatures like sea urchins, clams, and crabs. Plus, their impeccably good taste in food would only get better now that they can finally enroll in Le Cordon Bleu. Now, just because an elephant's brain is 3 times bigger than the human average, that doesn't mean elephants are 3 times smarter than us. Sure, they have 3 times more neurons, but only a small part of them is in the cortex, the part responsible for complex skills like problem-solving and learning. However, elephants are remarkably developed emotionally. While empathy is often considered a hallmark of human intelligence, elephants also put themselves in each other's shoes, feet. These sensitive beings can discern when their elephant buddies are in pain or feeling down, and they offer comfort when needed. With a more refined intelligence, they might delve into the world of art, expressing their complex emotions on huge canvases and using their trunks to create Jackson Pollock-inspired masterpieces. From a huge brain to a tiny one, the size of your pinky nail. Yep, we're talking about the hamster brain. These cute little buddies are among the cleanest animals in the world. And I'm not just talking about self-cleaning. They actually like to keep their surroundings clean, not only in captivity, but also in the wild. For example, hamsters dig deep burrows with nesting places, and they separate different sections for their waste and food. If hamsters were as smart as humans, they'd turn this cleaning OCD into a business. Hey, meet the Spark Joy rodent, the world's first hamster to publish a book, adapting Marie Kondo's techniques to keep its cage squeaky clean and organized. Hey, Rocky, come here, boy! Did you really expect the list to end without mentioning dogs? Let me guess. You probably think your best buddy is the smartest thing on 4 legs and beam with pride that Rocky actually knows its own name, right? Well, Rocky might be much smarter than you think. In fact, dogs can understand around 165 words. In our make-believe world, I'm pretty sure dogs would be the first animals to come up with their own complex language, opening wolf language schools around the country. I can picture dogs sitting down for TV interviews, declaring they're done being called man's best friend and would prefer to be recognized as joy coaches. Yeah, they're excellent at dealing with others and can even intentionally try to trick other dogs and humans to score some tasty rewards. Good for them, I guess.
Since the beginning of time, humans have shared the world with other species. Each one has a unique perception of what reality is like in terms of color, speed, and sound. Today, thanks to technology, we can more or less understand how our world sounds to animals. So how about we try living with their ears for a bit? Let's start with man's best friend, dogs. It is known that dogs experience time quite differently than our own. The best guess is that 1 human year equals 7 dog years. But when you call out their names, what exactly do they hear? Dogs experience our world slower than humans. That works both for their perception of time, but also for sound. Let's say you're calling Skipper to go for a walk. You're speaking at a normal pace like you do every day. But to Skipper, he's hearing you in slow motion, as if you just pressed the 0.75 speed on your Spotify app. You've also probably heard that dogs have a wider hearing range than humans, and that they can hear sounds from a very great distance. And this is true. An average human being has a hearing range from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. We hear better when we are younger and tend to hear less when we get older. Yep, this is actually scientific. But our dogs can hear up to 45 kilohertz, which is considerably more than us. Some dog breeds are known to be good hunters, and for that reason, they would need better hearing equipment. The thing is, dogs aren't as good as humans at distinguishing sounds. Humans easily know the difference between slow and go, while dogs, not so much. This is called frequency selectivity. The scientific explanation for this is that different parts of the cochlea answer to different frequencies. This is what a human ear looks like on the inside, and this is what a dog's ear looks like. The cochlea is this part right here that looks like the shell of a snail. It's made up of saltwater-like fluid. At the innermost center of this cochlea, there are tiny hairs that vibrate according to the frequency of sound we are receiving. Some hairs will only be activated by high-pitched sounds, while other hairs will be activated with lower notes. Dogs really prove to be humans' besties, as they also tend to lose their hearing with old age. You see, human hearing is at its prime when we're young. A study from the University of New South Wales says that a child can hear up to 24 kilohertz. When we're young, we can hear extremely high-pitched sounds, but this tends to decrease once we get older. The maximum hearing capacity of an older person can go as low as 8 kilohertz. I mean, this person probably can't hear the birds chirping or even the beeping of their microwave. Both in dogs and humans, the loss of hearing has to do with the loss of the tiny hairs in the cochlea. And what about cats? Cats can hear higher frequencies than dogs. Their hearing can go a little beyond 60 kilohertz. This is especially important since they hunt small rodents that make almost imperceptible noises to our human ears. But with a cat's hearing device, it can pick up on a mouse hiding in a bush over 100 feet away. The funny thing is that while dogs experience reality in slower motion than humans do, cats actually experience life about 9% faster than we do. You've probably heard that sound can also be classified as either infrasound or ultrasound. Here's what we'll do. I'll give you an example of a sound, and you'll tell me if you think it's infrasound or ultrasound. Would you say the sound of tectonic plates moving around is infra or ultrasound? The correct answer is infrasound. This one is tricky. The movement of ants in an underground tunnel. Also infrasound. Infrasounds are low-range frequencies, anything ranging below 20 hertz, which means we can't hear them. But an elephant can. When you look at elephants, one of the first things you'll notice is their enormous ears. Well, everything is pretty gigantic, but the ears are impressive, especially in comparison to ours. Their ears allow them to pick up on sound waves that are much longer than the ones we pick up on. This means they can pick up on the movement of clouds and can physically hear when rain clouds are gathering. This is helpful to them because they will know when it's time to head down to water reservoirs, for example. Elephants also use infrasound to communicate with each other. They do that by pounding their feet on the ground. This sets up a powerful but hardly audible vibration. And since elephants are so awesome, they can pick up the vibration through nerve endings in their feet and ear bones. It works kind of like a bush telephone. Speaking of vibration, how do you think a snake can be enchanted by a flute if it doesn't have any ears? Well, the snake is not following the music. It's following the man's imperceptible foot tapping on the ground. You see, for humans, sound waves are usually carried by the air, but snakes, who move around through the ground, are connected to the environment by vibration. Snakes don't have eardrums, so their inner ear is connected to their jaw. Plus, the vibrations move from bone to bone inside a snake. This is called osteophony, which literally means that snakes listen with their bones. If this worked for humans, sound waves could literally send chills down someone's spine, huh? Okay, so humans listen through the air. Elephants and snakes can hear through the ground. How does hearing work for water animals? You could think that the water element impairs hearing, but not for dolphins. Dolphins emit extremely high-frequency sound waves that are classified as ultrasound. They emit clicking sounds to scan the water for food and other animals. Whichever way sound bounces back to them will help them identify what's in the water ahead and around them. To put it simply, dolphins see with their ears. This ability is called echolocation, and it's a form of navigation through sound. Well, you've heard of sonars, right? It's an instrument ships use to search for things underwater. A sonar emits very fast sound pulses that bounce off the seafloor and back. This way, they can detect the depth of the water. They can find shipwrecks and even discover geological formations. That's pretty much what dolphins do to locate themselves. Oh, and if National Geographic is right, humans can hear frequencies up to 100 kilohertz when we are diving underwater. This means we can hear almost the same way as dolphins. Can you imagine using echolocation to wade through the water? Scientists don't exactly know why this happens, but they have two guesses. It might have something to do with how sound travels differently through the water. It can also have to do with the way our ears receive sound underwater and how our brain interprets it. Now, it's not only dolphins that can use sound to navigate through life. Bats can also do that. Since bats tend to live in dark or even pitch-black environments, they can't really count on their vision. But they have such precious hearing equipment that they might not even need to watch where they are going. Even though a bat's brain is tiny, it can thoroughly map the entire environment it is in and easily locate prey. What about rodents? If you've ever seen a mouse or a chipmunk bouncing around, you've probably thought they looked a bit accelerated. Here's a fun fact. Compared to humans, a chipmunk experiences reality at half the speed as we do. So what looks super fast and clumsy to us is seemingly pretty chill from that rodent's point of view. In terms of hearing, a mouse's hearing can go as high as 91 kilohertz, which is very, very high. Quite fascinating, huh? Chances are you have a dog wagging its precious tail around the house or sniffing at your feet. Ever marveled at how keen your dog's hearing is? I mean, it can hear you opening a bag of chips even if you're on a different floor in the house. Even with this amazing ability, most household dogs don't have the best hearing in the animal kingdom. Actually, they're not even in the top 5. On that note, let's venture into the world of animal hearing and try to imagine what life sounds like for other creatures. Look, we humans are pretty great. We've got all kinds of talents, but when it comes to the auditory Olympics, we're not even in the running. Put us next to a cat or a bat, and our ears look kind of basic. Take elephants, for instance. They are big animals, and so are their ears. Their auditory organs are capable of capturing infrasound waves. Now, these are not your run-of-the-mill sound waves. They're low-frequency, rumbling whispers that we humans can't hear. This means elephants can pick up on things like rain clouds on the move. Not only that, but these massive mammals have a pretty clever way of communicating too. They stomp the ground, creating vibrations barely noticeable to us. But to elephants, these vibrations are the equivalent of a long-distance phone call. The messages are received through their feet and ear bones, even when they're miles apart. Talk about having a good reception. Moving on to bats. They are the masters of night navigation, thanks to their use of echolocation. These animals emit high-frequency sounds, which bounce back after hitting objects. This echo helps bats create a mental map, allowing them to sway flawlessly in the dark. Just when we thought bats couldn't get any cooler, scientists discovered their hearing capabilities extend to their wings. Special hairs called Merkel hairs sense air movements, helping the bats detect upcoming objects. It's not the traditional hearing we're used to, but it's a fantastic adaptation to their environment. Dolphins, on the other hand, are masters of watery acoustics. For starters, you might think that being underwater would put a damper on hearing, but dolphins have turned this challenge into an advantage. They've got their own version of echolocation, emitting sonic pulses from their foreheads. These sounds bounce off objects and are picked up by the dolphin's jaw before being sent to the brain via highly developed auditory nerves. Their ears, though present, don't play a central role in hearing like ours do. Instead, dolphins have found innovative ways to listen, proving yet again how awesome animals are. Don't let their domestic status fool you. Your pet cats and dogs are auditory champs. Cats' ears are designed to catch high-frequency sounds from up to 160 feet away. Handy for catching mice, don't you think? Dogs, on the other hand, are pros at localizing sounds, thanks to the muscles around their ears. Ever seen your pooch perk up their ears when they hear something suspicious? That's their sharp hearing at work. Even the tiniest critters buzzing around us, like insects, can actually listen to the world. In fact, some insects have something akin to our human eardrums. It's a delicate little membrane, given the name tympany. Our eardrums jiggle with the sound waves. That shaking is then turned into a signal our brain would understand. Now, you've surely heard the nightly serenade of crickets or the rhythmic song of cicadas in the summer. These little symphony masters use exactly this kind of setup to listen to their world. That's not all, though. Some bugs take a different approach to eavesdropping on their surroundings. They've got these sensory cells right in the middle of their antennae. This structure is called the Johnston's organ. Take mosquitoes, for instance, or bees, or even fruit flies. They use their antennae, not just to feel their way around, but to listen in on the world too. It gets even wilder. Hawk moths, some dusky, nocturnal creatures, have this unique organ nestled right in their mouths. It's like a superpower that lets them hear ultrasonic sounds. With this, they can dodge the dangerous dives of bats out on the hunt. When it comes to the ultimate hearing trophy, the animal kingdom has a completely unique winner. It's actually a moth. Not just any moth, though. It's the greater wax moth, discovered by the scientists based in Glasgow, Scotland. They've got some fascinating insights about these moths that make our ears want to stand up and listen. Just to give you some context, the greater wax moth does not stand out when it comes to its appearance. I mean, it's brown. As for its daily activities, it loves nibbling on honeycomb. Despite blending in seamlessly in the animal kingdom, it's got a serious set of ears. How good is its hearing, you ask? Well, it's been found that this tiny creature can pick up on sounds at frequencies up to 300 kilohertz. By comparison, our human ears can only detect sounds up to around 20 kilohertz. This already unimpressive ability drops to about 15 kilohertz as we grow older. I mean, not even dolphins can compete. They can only hear sounds up to about 160 kilohertz. You're probably wondering, why would a moth need such super hearing? Scientists explain that the reason behind this extraordinary hearing lies in a survival instinct, predation, to be precise. Bats use high-frequency echolocation calls to find their tasty moth meals, amongst other insects. But these clever little moths have evolved to pick up frequencies even bats might not hit. Despite this reasoning, it was a bit of a mystery as to why these moths would even need to hear such high frequencies. During the research, specialists discovered that their recording at high-frequency ultrasound is tricky business. So there's a chance that bats might actually be capable of emitting calls at these super high frequencies that the moths can hear. To uncover all this, scientists used a specially designed ultrasonic device. It emitted these crazy high frequencies, and they then looked at the moth's reactions using electrodes to measure their neural responses. The practical implications of this research could be far-reaching. Understanding the inner workings of the greater wax moth's ear could have a big impact on the world of technology. This knowledge could help researchers build super tiny microphones, for example. We know that all sorts of critters, from the tiny creatures scuttling on the ground to the gigantic ones swimming in the ocean, can pick up on certain sound frequencies that our human ears just can't. However, scientists have made a fascinating discovery. They've shown, for the first time, that our ability to pick up on tiny differences in sound frequencies might just be superior to that of animals, thanks to our individual neurons. How did they prove this, you ask? Well, they took advantage of a unique technique that lets them record what single neurons are up to in the auditory cortex. That's the part of our brain that's a major player in processing sounds when we're exposed to various noises. You see, most of what we know about the auditory cortex was unearthed from past research that studied how animals' neural activity reacts to sound. Those studies were super useful in giving us a peek into how sounds are processed in our auditory system. But they didn't really let us know what sets us humans apart in the way we perceive sounds. When scientists tested how we respond to made-up sounds, they found out that our neurons in the auditory cortex responded with a surprising level of accuracy to specific frequencies. They could even pick up differences as tiny as a quarter of a tone just by looking at the reactions of individual neurons. That's a level of detail that you wouldn't typically find in the auditory cortex of other mammals. The one exception might be bats, who use their hearing in pretty unique ways. But this could explain why we humans can distinguish between frequencies better than animals. It seems like the way our brains process sound frequencies has some special features to it. When they played more natural sounds like conversations, music, and everyday noise, the neurons showed complex activity patterns. These patterns couldn't be fully explained just by the neuron's frequency selectivity. Animal studies have shown similar phenomena, but it's the first time we've seen this in humans.
Have you ever wondered what animals looked like when they first appeared in the ancient oceans over 500 million years ago? Well, scientists have been scratching their heads about this for more than a century, and now they believe that they finally found the answer. So let's take a look at their discovery. You see, our ancient ancestors probably lived 600 or 700 million years ago. They were soft-bodied, so unfortunately they didn't leave any fossils behind. Scientists decided to uncover the secrets of these ancient creatures by comparing them to all the animals that exist today. First, we need to ask ourselves, what is an animal? Well, we know that they're incredible creatures with heads, innards, muscles, and brains. And we know that humans are part of this animal gang too. We're called bilaterians, and we have all these cool features that evolved around 500 million years ago during the Cambrian explosion. But there are also awesome creatures with very simple body plans. We've got jellyfish, sea anemones, sponges, ctenophores, and many more. They may not have fancy brains or muscles like us bilaterians, but they still have the essential qualities of animal life. For example, they develop from fertilized eggs into living beings. So, researchers decided to take a look at them to figure out which group was the earliest branch on the tree of life. To solve this mystery, they used a technique called DNA sequencing. They looked at the genes of these animals. The similarities and differences in the genes helped scientists understand how creatures are related and how they evolved. By comparing DNA, scientists could piece together their evolutionary family tree. The list narrowed down to two candidates: sponges, which are basically lazy filter feeders, and comb jellies, which are fierce predators cruising through the oceans. But the controversy remained: who came first? Sponges may seem to be simple fellows. After their free swimming phase, they settle down and filter tiny food particles from the water. No nerves or muscles for them, but their hard parts make excellent scrubbers. For a long time, scientists believed that sponges were the very first branch of the animal family tree. They thought that before anything else, there had been these tiny single-celled creatures called protozoans. Then these protozoans came together and formed colonies that eventually evolved into sponges. And from there, sponges became the ancestors of all animals, including humans. But hold on. Meet the comb jellies, those mesmerizing creatures you often see in aquariums. They may resemble jellyfish, but they're not even close relatives. Instead of squishing through the water, ctenophores use rows of beating cilia, like combs, to propel themselves. You can spot a sea gooseberry, a common ctenophore, along the California coast. It's about an inch in diameter and quite fascinating to observe. Anyway, now we have two contenders. To find out whether sponges or comb jellies were the first, the biologists turned to an unexpected superhero: chromosomes. You see, each species has its own unique chromosome number and gene distribution along those chromosomes. For example, humans have 23 pairs of chromosomes. So scientists didn't just look at the genes each animal had, they also checked where those genes were located on their chromosomes. You see, as animals evolve, their chromosomes rearrange, and genes move around. Once they move, it's really hard for them to go back to their original spots. So, the clever biologists figured that the animal with the least shuffling of genes on their chromosomes must have appeared first. They basically had to find a puzzle with the least shuffled pieces. To crack this mystery, the scientists compared the gene placements in sponges and comb jellies to their closest single-cell non-animal relatives. These single-cell relatives were like cousins to the first animal and held clues about the original genome. The closer an organism's genome was to the original, the less it had changed and the more likely it was to be the sister. So the research team discovered something incredible. Despite more than 500 million years of independent evolution, sponges, jellyfish, and many other invertebrates share similar sets of genes on their chromosomes. It basically meant that animal chromosomes evolved slowly. It also gave the researchers a golden opportunity to digitally reconstruct the chromosomes of the ancient common ancestor. There was another big problem, though. We had no idea what the chromosomes in comb jellies looked like until the year 2021. That's when brilliant biologists finally cracked the code. They discovered the chromosome structure of a particular comb jelly with a pretty complicated name. Yeah, I'm not even gonna try. Anyway, let me tell you, it was like nothing they had seen before. Strangely, the chromosomes of these comb jellies were totally different from the chromosomes of other animals. The scientists were perplexed. Is it because they had changed a lot over millions and millions of years? Or is that because they actually appeared before all other animals? It took scientists some time and a lot of hard work to fill in those missing pieces. And guess what? Finally, they found the answer. It turns out the first branch of the animal tree belonged to comb jellies. Sponges came next, and then all the other animals, including us humans. So let's discuss this little funny creature from which we all originated. Jellies, including comb jellies, are simple creatures with few specialized organs. They can sense chemicals in the water to find their food, and they even have a special structure called a statocyst that helps them orient themselves in the water. Comb jellies are also known as ctenophores. They're cute little creatures that live all around the ocean, from the North and South Poles to the sunny equator. They can be found from the surface all the way down to the deepest part of the sea. These amazing animals belong to the group of invertebrates, which means they don't have a backbone like we do. They come in various sizes depending on the species. And by the way, despite their extraterrestrial appearance, their soft bodies are perfectly designed for their underwater world. They're more than 95% water, which makes them lightweight and agile. Comb jelly is a fascinating creature with an oval shape and 8 rows of tiny comb-like plates. It uses these combs to swim gracefully through the water. And guess what? When it moves, its combs create a magical rainbow effect as they diffract the light. It's like swimming through a shimmering prism. But they aren't as cute or harmless as they seem. In reality, comb jellies are voracious predators. They love to feast on other jellies, and some of them can even stretch their stomachs to hold prey that's almost half their own size. So, their diet consists of other comb jellies, as well as some salps and siphonophores. Talk about having a big appetite. And here's another interesting fact. Even though comb jellies got a head start in branching off from the tree, both they and sponges have been evolving since then. They've been on their own journeys, adapting to their environments and developing new features over time. It's a reminder that evolution is an ongoing process. It also shows how important it is to take care of these unique creatures and their environment. Changes in jelly populations can be a sign of bigger issues, so it's crucial to protect their habitats. But why is all this so important? Well, these discoveries help us understand how animals have developed. By studying the early branches of the animal tree of life, we can understand about the characteristics and traits that all animals share. For example, how they sense their surroundings, eat, and move. We can also learn all sorts of cool things about how animals first emerged and evolved into the wondrous array of species we have today. The scientists were really excited about their discovery. They knew that they had found a relic from a very ancient time. So, there you have it. This discovery is like a magical time machine that allows us to peer deep into the past. It's a treasure trove of knowledge about the origins of animal life. I'm sure scientists will find out more interesting things in the future, so stay tuned.
Wait, don't tell me that life on Earth has bubbled for about 3.5 billion years, and the biggest creature we got is the blue whale? I mean, not bad, but that doesn't sound nearly as fun as those cool giant creatures you get to see in movies. Yeah, you recognize the iconic roar here. It appeared on TV, in comic books, in video games, and in cinema. I mean, come on. It even got its own star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame on its 50th birthday. So, what would it take to get good old Godzilla from the TV screen to our streets? And we're talking about the beast that's really gigantic. In the original film from 1954, Godzilla was thought to be 164 feet tall. This was the perfect height for the monster to just peer over the biggest buildings in Tokyo at the time. But as further movies came, Godzilla became bigger and bigger. In theory, this would be the biggest animal that could exist and not end up crushed by the gravitational field of our planet. Even if we're talking about some tiny Godzilla of, let's say, 14,000 tons. To take the gravitational force of our planet and carry such weight, Godzilla must have some incredibly strong bones. And as an object gets bigger, its volume will actually increase faster than its surface area. Okay, wait, let's start small. So, cells are the building blocks of life, and they come in all shapes and sizes. But the thing is, cells have a problem when they try to grow too big. As they grow, their surface area, the outside, doesn't keep up with their volume, which means the inside. It's like having a big mouth but a tiny stomach. You can't digest all the food you want to eat. Why haven't I learned that already? Especially when I open my fridge for a midnight snack. So, if cells get too big, they can't get enough nutrients in and waste out fast enough. It would be like living in a very big house, but with just one tiny door to go in and out. Plus, that's not their only problem. Cells also need to be able to divide and replicate, and this task gets tricky as they get bigger. They need this thing called microtubules for that. It's sort of like a skeleton that gives them structure. But don't worry, evolution is a foxy little thing. There are some cells out there, like a specific type of invasive algae, that have found ways to break the rules and get really big. And they don't even need to divide to do that. This algae could pass as an aquatic fern that has fronds up to 31 inches long. But what you're looking at is just one big cell. It has multiple nuclei, though, which are like the control centers of cells. Plus, there are even some bacteria that are living in a symbiotic relationship with the organism, which means they help each other out when necessary. It's like having a bunch of different rooms inside one big house, with some roommates living there that help around from time to time. Then there's a monster algae known as the sailor's eyeball, which is like a giant ball of green slime. It can grow up to 2 inches in diameter, but is also considered to be just a single cell. My personal favorite would be this one. Again, we're talking about a single cell, but check out its stem and cap. It looks like a tiny little umbrella. It can grow up to 4 inches tall, which is definitely not bad for a single cell. Most cells are too small to see with the naked eye, but these fellas don't hesitate to break the rules. Now, when it comes to animals getting really big, there's a limit to their size. It's like trying to build a really tall tower. Eventually, it'll become too heavy and the base won't be able to support the weight anymore. Similarly, when an animal gets really big, its bones and muscles have to evolve to support all that weight, and it becomes more and more difficult to do so. In one of the movies, Godzilla was 390 feet tall. At that size, it would be really difficult for its heart to pump blood to its brain. And if it was a reptile, Godzilla would need to spend all of its time lying in the sun to stay warm. So we'd have to hide in the shadows, hoping some bigger animals that live in warm areas could keep it full. If Godzilla was a mammal, though, it would generate too much body heat and end up cooking itself. The biggest land animals we know of were sauropods, a type of dinosaur with a really long neck and tail. They could grow up to 131 feet long and weigh up to 70 tons, which could be as heavy as 10 elephants. Evolution was pretty efficient when it had to come up with its body plan. Sauropods ate plants. They had a smart way of eating that allowed them to stay in one spot and still find enough food. They could move their long necks around to reach plants, so they didn't have to walk around too much or waste too much energy. Yeah, my kind of folks. That's impressive, but let's get realistic. Not many giant animals are happy to eat salad for dinner. If you had a giant beast such as Godzilla, you can expect it to go after its prey. And that becomes too hard for its body to support all that weight and perform all the necessary activities. The largest meat-eating dinosaurs were still pretty big, but not as big as the sauropods. The biggest one we know of is a fella called Spinosaurus, which was about 50 feet long. It managed to survive by eating fish and some other creatures that lived in the water. It would be so cool to have Godzilla in real life, if you have some safe basement where it won't find you, of course. But it's not likely some animal could really get bigger than our beloved sauropod. At least, not without running into some serious physical limitations. And have you ever wondered how big a plant could get? It turns out some trees have already reached amazing heights, such as the General Sherman, the largest living tree on the planet. It's more than 275 feet tall and has nearly 53,000 cubic feet of wood. It's gigantic, but still a little bit smaller than the Lindsay Creek French tree, the biggest tree ever recorded. It was a coast redwood 390 feet tall and had a volume of more than 90,000 cubic feet, which is as big as some skyscrapers. But it ain't easy for plants to get big either. When they're tall, it's tricky for them to get water from the roots to the leaves. Redwoods have a couple of tricks up their sleeves, though. For example, they absorb moisture from fog through their leaves. Plus, they have a wide base that gives them more support. If we want to build taller buildings, we also need to think about the challenges plants face, like how to build a good base that will support the structure and transport water and nutrients. If we're not just looking for height, we can take a peek at other massive organisms on our home planet, such as Pando. This is a male aspen forest in Utah that covers 107 acres and is basically one giant organism. It weighs almost 6,000 tons and is one of the biggest organisms on Earth. Perfect salad bowl for Godzilla. I mean, plants aren't the only organisms that can grow to massive sizes. There are fungi, like the honey mushroom, that can grow into a network of tiny threads called hyphae. They tend to spread out over big areas, and it's like a pretty big underground web, connecting everything together. One specimen in Michigan covers 90 acres and weighs about 400 tons. Now that's a lot of mushrooms.
Did you know that animals see the world differently from us? Take this. Pigeons actually have better vision than humans. Crazy, right? So let's try to see the world from the animal's eyes. Let's start with snakes. Their way of seeing the world is totally different from ours. They have special infrared-sensitive receptors in their snouts. This allows them to see the radiated heat of warm-blooded mammals. Now let's move on to cows. These big guys don't see colors as well as humans do. They can't see the color red because they don't have the necessary receptors in their retinas for that. So they only perceive variations of blue and green. Also, they don't like it when someone approaches them from behind. They have a near panoramic vision, and the only area they can't see is directly to the back. So if you're ever sneaking up on a cow, make sure you give them a heads up. Horses have a blind spot right in front of their faces because of their eye placement. This means they can't see things directly in front of them. Also, they don't see as many colors as we do. Just like cows, their world is mostly made up of greens, yellows, and blues. Poor guys. Fish eyes have ultraviolet receptors and a more spherical lens than humans. This gives them an almost 360-degree vision. As for colors, they're able to see all the same ones as we humans do. But because light behaves differently underwater, they have a hard time discerning red and its shades. Deep-sea fish can easily see in the dark, which is pretty cool. Sharks, on the other hand, can't distinguish colors at all, but they see much clearer under the water than we do. Birds have some pretty unique ways of seeing the world. Unlike humans, birds can see ultraviolet light. This helps them differentiate between males and females of their own species, as well as better navigate in their surroundings. Also, they are very good at focusing. For example, falcons and eagles can focus on a small mouse in the field up to a distance of 1 mile. A pigeon can see all the tiny details, so if you ever need to find a crack in the pavement, just ask a pigeon. And by the way, it has a 340-degree field of vision, and generally their vision is considered twice as good as a human's. There, you have it. I'm envious of a pigeon. Insects have some weird vision patterns too. Flies, for example, have thousands of little eye receptors that work together to give them a big picture of what's going on around them. And get this, they see everything in slow-mo. Plus, they can see ultraviolet light. It helps them with communication. Bees have their own problems. These guys can't tell what the color red is. To them, it looks like a dark blue. How messed up is that? Now, rats. These little guys can't see red either, but that's not the weirdest part. Either of their eyes moves on its own, so they're seeing double like all the time. It's a wonder they don't run into more walls, am I right? Cats don't see shades of red or green, but they do see brown, yellow, and blue hues like a boss. Plus, they got a wide-angle view, so they can peep more stuff on the sides than we can. There's more, though. When it's pitch black outside, cats become ninja-like and can see 6 times better than us. Their pupils adjust to any lighting like magic. Now let's talk about dogs. These furry friends can't see red or orange, but they do rock at blue and violet. Plus, they can differentiate 40 shades of gray. I mean, it's not 50, but still impressive. On a related note, frogs are really picky eaters. They won't even bother with food that isn't moving. They could be surrounded by a buffet of delicious bugs, but if they don't wiggle, frogs won't even bat an eye, and they're not the most observant creatures either. If something isn't important to them, like a shadow, they won't even bother looking at it. Chameleons have eyes that can move independently of each other, so they can see everything around them without even turning their heads. They can even see 2 images at the same time, like a double feature movie, one in front and one behind. Pretty impressive, right? What would you do if you suddenly got 360-degree vision like a chameleon? Share in the comments.
Take a look at these animals. There's a deer, a dolphin, a squirrel, and a dinosaur? You've already figured out I'm about to ask you what they all have in common, right? The boring answer is they've all lived on this planet at a certain point in time. Blah, 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 sure. What's even more surprising about their common features is their coloration. On that note, let me tell you about Abbott Thayer and his amazing theories on animal coloration. He was a portrait painter extraordinaire, but he also had a thing for the colors of the natural world. He came up with some pretty cool ideas about how animals can stay hidden from predators or prey, and they're still relevant today. One of his most famous theories is called countershading. Basically, animals are painted by nature so that the parts that get the most light from the sky are the darkest, and vice versa. It's like they're wearing the perfect outfit to match their environment. And let me tell you, this technique is not just for fashion-savvy animals. It's also used by ships to avoid detection. Thayer and his friend even got a patent for it. Thayer also came up with the idea of background blending, which is when an animal or object is painted to match the colors of its surroundings. Think of it as a natural camouflage suit. Thayer didn't stop there, though. He also proposed a theory on something called disruptive or dazzle camouflage. This is when an object is painted with a crazy pattern to make it harder to judge its distance or speed. It's like when you're trying to hit a piñata that's moving all over the place and you can't quite get your timing right. Think about it. If you're a shark swimming beneath the surface of the ocean and you look up, you're going to see the bright sky and the lighter colored ocean surface. If you're a prey animal swimming on the surface, your lighter belly will blend in with the bright sky, while your darker back will blend in with the deeper water. It's not just aquatic animals that use countershading to their advantage. Land animals like deer and rabbits have lighter bellies and darker backs, which helps them blend in with the dappled light of the forest floor. And let's not forget about birds. Many birds have countershading on their feathers, which helps them blend in with the sky when seen from below and the ground when seen from above. Some creatures out there have a way of warning others that they're not to be messed with. Yeah, it's called aposematism, a fancy word for using bright colors or markings to let predators know that they're toxic or just downright unappetizing. Take the skunk, for example. That broad white stripe on its back is like a neon sign that says, "Don't get too close or else you'll regret it." And those yellow-banded poison dart frogs? They're walking billboards for their own poison with their bright and graphic colors, letting everyone know that they're not to be fooled with. Even wasps use the power of bright colors to signal to potential threats that they're packing a sting. And you know those cute little ladybugs? The brighter they are, the more toxic they can be. Who knew that something so adorable could be so deadly? It turns out that white, yellow, red, and black are the most effective warning colors in the animal kingdom. Just like how traffic signs caution drivers, these bright markings are nature's way of saying, "Watch out, buddy!" If you ever come across a critter with some serious bling, just remember, they're not trying to be fashionable. But how come some animals have evolved to use bright colors and others didn't? It's a question that's been baffling scientists for a long time. Thankfully, one theory coming from a team of researchers at the University of Arizona has uncovered some interesting insights into this colorful mystery. It turns out that the function of an animal's vibrant coloring is strongly linked to the activity patterns of its evolutionary ancestors. So species that use their bright colors to attract mates are usually descended from ancestors that were active during the day. Meanwhile, those that use their colors to ward off predators usually had ancestors that were active at night. It seems that animals have evolved to use their colors in the most advantageous way possible. Now, you may be wondering how vivid coloration even came to be in the first place. Well, it seems that early in their evolution, most species started out pretty plain and drab. But over time, bright colors evolved across many different lineages because they helped animals survive and reproduce. But not all bright colors are created equal. The researchers found that vividly colored lizards and birds usually use their coloring as a mating signal to attract partners, while colorful amphibians and snakes often wear their colors as a warning sign for predators. And get this, many of these amphibians and snakes are diurnal now, or active during the day, but their ancestors were actually nocturnal, active at night. So, there's no clear connection between warning colors and present-day activity patterns. Mother Nature sure is creative when it comes to helping animals adapt and survive in the wild. But there are some creatures out there that could take the award for the weirdest animals any day. Have you ever stopped to think about what it would be like if we could see through all the layers that protect our internal organs? Because that's exactly what has happened with the glass frog. Imagine you're strolling through the lush rainforest of Central and South America, and you come across a tiny little frog perched on a leaf. From above, it looks like your average run-of-the-mill frog, but if you flip it over, you'll see all its organs on display, heart, intestines, and all. You might be wondering why on earth these frogs have evolved to be see-through. It turns out that their super thin translucent skin actually helps them blend in with their surroundings too. When light shines on them from above, their silhouette becomes all jumbled up and difficult for predators to decipher. And let's face it, when you're surrounded by vibrant greenery, a green topcoat is a perfect camouflage. But what about those transparent legs? Well, they help to blur the outlines of the frog's body, making it even tougher for predators to recognize their shape. I, for one, had no idea penguins also came in yellow. One wildlife photographer stumbled upon a sight that left him gobsmacked on a remote island in the southern Atlantic Ocean. He captured some amazing images of a yellow king penguin that had everyone on the beach flapping with excitement. There were 120,000 birds on that beach, and this was the only yellow one there. Scientists are scratching their heads as to how this coloration happened naturally. They think it's a form of leucism, which is basically an animal's inability to produce the proper pigments for its natural coloration. But they're not entirely sure. All king penguins produce small amounts of this yellow pigment naturally, but in this particular bird, it seems to be the only pigment the animal could produce. Talk about standing out from the crowd, am I right? There are some colors, though, you'll rarely find in the animal kingdom. According to some polls, blue is one of, if not the most popular colors amongst people. Most animals, however, have a tough time sporting this shade. Some animals get their pigment from the food they eat, like how flamingos turn pink from eating shrimp, or how goldfish can alter their golden hue based on their diet. But unfortunately, there's no true blue pigments in plants, so animals can't turn blue through their food. Instead, they have to get creative. For instance, some animals make structures that change the wavelength of light to appear blue. The blue morpho butterfly is a great example of this. Its wing scales are shaped in ridges that cause light to blend in such a way that it reflects only the blue color. If the scales were shaped differently, the butterfly would lose its beautiful blue color.
It's just a regular day. As usual, you're taking a shower before starting to get ready for work. Everything is going as planned. Until it isn't. One clumsy move, some water spilled on the floor, and you're flapping your arms in the air, your body nearing the floor with frightening speed. Everything goes black. First thing you hear is a high-pitched whining in your head. Ouch, your head. Ugh. You carefully get up. There's no blood, and that's good. An even better thing is that the annoying noise stops abruptly. Holding your head, you leave the bathroom and almost stumble over your cat, Milo. He hisses, and then a clear voice in your head says, "Clumsy loser." Huh? You whip your head around in fear, but you see no one. It's just you and Milo? You've probably hit your head more than you thought. You shrug and make your way to the kitchen. Milo follows you. You hear ceaseless grumbling. Why can he sleep in the bedroom and I'm banned from there? Why haven't I gotten my meal yet? This leather creature's too lazy. Shall I scratch the sofa or leave a mouse on his pillow? The first thought that comes to your mind is, we have mice in the house? The second is more relevant. I'm losing my marbles. Great! Acting on autopilot, you pour some milk into Milo's bowl and fill another one up with some dry food. The cat doesn't seem to be satisfied with how fast you are, if his, "Oh, for goodness sake, move it, man," is anything to go by. Okay, now you'll have to live with the knowledge that your beloved cat Milo actually has the personality of a grumpy old man. Duh. You decide to lock yourself in the bathroom again because you're starting to get overwhelmed. You sit down heavily on the toilet lid and almost jump a foot in the air when you hear someone arguing loudly. After looking around, you find out that, apparently, there are not only mice, but also cockroaches in your house. Just great. At the moment, You're staring at a couple of these insects, which seem to be having a fight. At least, one of them is accusing the other of... Wait, what? Cheating? You've heard enough. You're about to dash out of the bathroom when you hear a bang. In the living room, you find your cat on the floor under a smashed flower pot. The worst thing? He seems to be really hurt. He won't stop whimpering and meowing.
Ugh, it hurts! It hurts! My paw! Ouch! Ouch! But the sofa can't remain unscratched today.
You grab Milo, shove him into the carrier,
Hey, watch out, you leather bag!
and head for the clinic. On the way, you have to concentrate hard to block out the noise of countless voices assaulting you. The waiting area at the vet is full. Uh-oh, you're in for a long wait. Half an hour later, your head is ready to explode. You found out that yellow python is suspiciously interested in the hamster a girl in the corner is clutching to her chest. So fat, so pretty. The hamster's worried about his stash of nuts.
Where did I hide them? Where?
A tiny dog that has come with an elderly lady is anxious about needles.
If that sharp thingy comes near me once again, they'll regret it. I'll destroy everyone on my way.
Finally, it's your turn. The vet invites you to her office, and you bend to pick up Milo when a desperate-looking young man bursts into the room.
My puppy! What's wrong with him?
The vet looks at you apologetically, but you're focused on the puppy. It looks weak, but you manage to figure out the words,
Chocolate! Yum!
when you tell the vet and the anxious owner that the pooch has eaten some chocolate, which is basically poison for dogs. They give you a funny look and disappear into the doctor's office. Sometime later, the guy exits, holding the dog that looks way better than before. When they leave, the vet turns to you. How did you figure out the dog had eaten chocolate? Uh-oh, here it comes. You decide that honesty is the best strategy and tell the vet that you can understand what animals say. Of course, she doesn't believe you. You have to try hard to persuade her. But with the help of two other dogs, Milo and an elderly squirrel, you manage to make her believe you. When you get back home, your head is spinning and you're pretty hungry. All you can think about is some fried eggs and bacon. Yum. Wait, bacon? But it's... Uh-oh. Apparently, starting today, you're a vegan. Anyway, that's when it starts. You don't know how it happens, but you become famous overnight. The next morning, a loud noise wakes you up, and it doesn't sound like animals talking to you. You look out of the window and see crowds of people gathered around your house. Some of them are reporters, but others are pet owners that have come to ask you for help. Milo is not happy. While grumbling nonstop and calling you names, he bites your leg and retreats under the stairs. And you go out of your house to talk to people and answer the reporter's questions. In the evening, you're exhausted, but also happy. You've saved several animals today. They had serious health and psychological problems their owners couldn't figure out on their own. Lying in bed in the dark, you think of how you can use your ability. That's when your plan takes shape. Soon, you become the most renowned animal care specialist in the world. You listen to animals talking about their problems, talk them out of depression, and help them resolve misunderstandings with their owners. TV shows invite you for interviews. Your YouTube channel is growing every day. People recognize you on the street and ask you to take pictures with them. You travel the world, help endangered species, and give lectures. You open vet clinics all over the globe and invite the best professionals to work there. You never feel lonely. There's always someone to talk to or listen to. At least some birds when you're walking in the park, or some fish when you're having a rare moment of rest on the beach. At the same time, you've come to realize how many animals are begging for help, but no one can hear them. You decide to take up the role of their speaker. It turns out you're now famous not only in the human world, but also in the world of animals. They're grateful, and in return, They start informing you of different natural disasters that are about to happen on the planet. You've heard that animals can predict earthquakes or volcanic eruptions. And if before, people had to try hard to notice some unusual behavior of certain species, now animals just pass you information about what's going to happen and where. With time, you notice that you spend less time among people and more time with animals. Together, you plan campaigns against zoos, circuses, and other places where animals are kept against their will. And then, one day, the unthinkable happens. You're returning home when a black van stops next to you. A few big masked guys grab you and push you inside. The doors close behind your back. Inside, you find out that several influential people aren't happy with your activity. You realize that this trip isn't going to end well. The guys blindfold you and lead you somewhere, but at one moment, you lose your footing and hit your head on something hard. You open your eyes. Milo is standing over you, looking at your lying body rather indifferently. And then, the most terrible thing happens. He meows what sounds like a whole sentence, turns away, and walks out of the bathroom. And you don't understand a meow of what he's saying. Was it all just a dream?
Okay, let's face it, we humans are pretty ordinary. I mean, we're no superheroes with superpowers, right? What, you didn't get the memo? But the animal world has a bunch of superheroes. Some creatures live forever, and those who seem to not care about the laws of gravity. Critters that are immune to venom, and those that can run on water. And some of them will send shivers down your spine. So the first superpower on the list is the ability to live without water. Kangaroo rats can get by without water for years. They actually don't mind living without any water. Humans, on the other hand, can only survive 3 days without water. Humans 0, kangaroo rats 1. These little buddies live in extremely arid desert areas and have to get water from the seeds and plants they eat. And although it may sound a bit disturbing, kangaroo rats also know how to extract water from their urine before they set off on a bathroom trip. This way, they don't waste a single drop of precious moisture. Well, that would come in handy at sporting events. Now let me introduce you to the Peter Parker of the animal world. Yep, seems like Spider-Man is real, but not human. Meet a gecko lizard, or simply gecko. This critter has a marvelous ability to climb up all kinds of vertical surfaces and can even go for a walk on the ceiling. This gravity-defying feat is possible thanks to the lizard's unique foot pads covered with tiny hairs. They can cling to almost any kind of surface, no matter whether it's smooth, hard, rough, or soft. One more fun fact about these guys is that they lack eyelids, so they always keep an eye wide open for what's going on around them. If you wonder how they keep their eyes protected, here's the answer. Their eyes are covered with a transparent membrane, the cornea. Sure thing, they can't close their eyes, and if they have something in their eye, they simply lick it off. Right, they clean their eyeballs by licking them. I guess that's another superpower. Any supersonic superpowers here? Sure. A 1-inch long subtropical shrimp disorients its prey with a sonic boom. Despite its modest size, the pistol shrimp is one of the loudest marine animals. When the shrimp snaps its claws, it creates a sound as loud as a sonic boom. Naturally, this sound stuns the prey, and the shrimp can catch it without too much effort. Now, in the comic world, there's venom. In the animal world, there's a guy that can be called anti-venom. Opossums are known for their handy trick of pretending to have passed away when a predator attacks them. But that's not the end of the story. These guys are also immune to rattlesnake and pit viper venom. The secret is a peptide that helps opossums neutralize dangerous chemicals. This is the reason why snakes are a favorite treat on opossums' diet. There's one curious thing they have on their diet: ticks. One opossum can hoover up about 5,000 ticks per season, and most of them are picked off their own bodies. Now, imagine a fish that is so notorious that it's called a dangerous fish. It's mabenga, and it literally translates to dangerous fish in Swahili. This monster lives in freshwater and doesn't mind having a crocodile for lunch. Not a whole crocodile, but Mabega can take a bite out of them. But to be honest, these guys are intimidated by the crocodiles, the same way the crocs are intimidated by them. Now, you're watching this video on some gadget, right? Well, we all owe the gadgets we have to the electric eels in some way. I mean, all gadgets have batteries, and eels contributed a lot to the invention of an electric battery back in 1800. I know, the batteries have unrecognizably changed since then, but still, the first electric battery ever was invented thanks to electric eels. Anyway, if you see one of them and want to thank them for their magnificent invention, don't do that. Thing is, they can deliver shocks up to 860 volts. You don't want to experience that. Now let's talk about the Count Dracula of the animal kingdom. Nope, I'm not talking about bats. I'm talking about the fanged vampire fish. These fish are known as payara and have 2 long fangs protruding from their lower jaw. Here's why some people associate them with vampires. Hippos are the beauty gurus, since they know how to save a fortune on skincare. Living under the harsh African sun, these animals secrete a sweat-like red oily substance that evaporates and keeps the animals' bodies cool. Besides, the fluid works as a moisturizer, sunscreen, and antibiotic all in one. But they're not the only ones with such a superpower. Mantis shrimp know how to produce natural sunscreen too, but they use it for eye protection. It's all about amino acid pigments, and these pigments act as special filters that contribute to their sharp vision too. That's what I call multitasking. Meerkats have dark patches around their eyes which makes them look even cuter. But these black circles aren't there just to make these buddies more adorable. They also function as built-in sunglasses. The dark fur on the patches blocks the blazing sun, and as a result, meerkats can gaze directly at the sky. On top of that, the sentry, a meerkat that watches out for birds and other predators, can easily see danger coming and alert its mates. Wild goats are famous for their climbing skills, but the alpine ibex from northern Italy is the champion. This critter can climb nearly any vertical surface, defying several physical laws in the process. Interestingly, the animals that do walk on the steepest cliff walls are typically mother goats with their little ones. Large males prefer to keep their distance and use flat horizontal surfaces. Smart guys. Some animals protect themselves with venom or nasty bites, while others use chemical tricks for protection. Listen to this. Some species of millipedes produce hydrogen cyanide and exude it when they feel threatened. Hydrogen cyanide is odorless but highly toxic. One little millipede can't seriously hurt you, but you may have burns or even blisters if your skin is sensitive. Plus, to make the picture even scarier, some millipedes glow in the dark. So watch out, and if you see a crawling spot of light at night, run away as fast as you can. When the bombardier beetle feels threatened, it sprays scorching liquid from the tip of its abdomen with a loud popping sound. As soon as the beetle senses danger, a chemical reaction starts in special reservoirs in its abdomen. The heat from this process nearly reaches the boiling point and also produces special gas that triggers the ejection. This super protection is usually fatal for the attacking insects. I guess so. Plumed basilisk lizards have an uncanny ability to run on water. First of all, their hind feet are equipped with long toes which have fringes of skin that can spread out in the water. As a result, a bigger surface of the lizard's foot comes into contact with water. Then, when it runs on water, it pumps its legs incredibly fast. This creates little pockets of air that prevent the animal from drowning by keeping it on the surface. Now, fleas can be annoying, but it doesn't make them any less amazing. These tiny critters can leap about 50 times their body length. If people could do the same, we would be jumping about 1/4 mile into the air. Well, let's try it. The most curious thing about fleas' astonishing ability is that they take most of the power for leaps from their toes, not knees. So, what's your favorite animal superpower? I vote for the kangaroo rat. I don't like standing in lines for the bathroom.
The sky suddenly turns orange. All you can see as you look up are millions of butterflies. You just got lucky to witness the spectacular natural show, the annual migration of monarch butterflies. Every fall, as the days get shorter and the temperatures go down in the northeastern US and Canada, these beautiful creatures leave their summer breeding grounds. They travel up to 3,000 miles to Mexico and never come back. Their perfect overwintering ground is high in the mountains. Millions of monarch butterflies are safe there in the canopy of OML fir trees. Once the winter is over, it's time for them to go back up north. They make a stopover around Texas to mate and lay eggs on milkweed plants. A few days later, these eggs turn into caterpillars that feed on the plant until they transform into grown-up butterflies. Now, it's their turn to continue the journey up north until they find a new breeding ground. This way, generations keep changing en route, and it may take up to 5 of them to get to the final destination back in Canada. It's a natural mystery how the butterflies traveling south live up to 8 months traveling with the air currents. The same species going back completes its life cycle in 5 to 7 weeks. Scientists still don't know why the monarchs migrate and how they find their way. It could be connected with the blooming of milkweed plants, their primary food source. They probably find their way around based on the position of the sun. Humpback whales are real champions when it comes to migration and size among mammals. They cover a distance of up to 5,000 miles following their lunch. In the summer, they move towards the poles to colder waters, where there's plenty of krill and small fish. In the winter, they go south towards the equator's tropical waters. They also travel to mate. They have specific locations where they gather to do it. During the winter breeding season, you can hear male humpback whales sing, most likely to attract females or mark their territory. They produce a long series of calls and can repeat the same song for several hours. When the song changes, all singers that are currently migrating pick up the new tune. It's amazing how they do it when the distance between groups can be over 3,000 miles. Sea turtles migrate for more sentimental reasons. For hundreds of millions of years, these cute family guys return to the exact place where they were born to lay their eggs. They can cover up to thousands of miles, mostly when the seasons change and the waters are of a comfortable temperature. It could take them years, since some of them travel across the Pacific Ocean between Indonesia and the west coast of the United States and Canada, which is a total of 10,000 miles. But how do they find the exact spot they need if their parents can't just send them a geotag? Scientists have found out that they navigate using the invisible lines of the Earth's magnetic field. It turns out that each part of the coastline has its unique magnetic characteristics. The turtles remember theirs and travel using their internal compass. The magnetic field changes slowly but surely, so they have to shift their nesting sites accordingly. Salmon are born in freshwater streams and move to the ocean as juveniles. Atlantic salmon are brown and spotted as they cover hundreds of miles in fresh water and turn silvery in the ocean, where they travel for up to 1,000 miles. Adult salmon stay in the ocean for 1 to 5 years, feeding mostly on zooplankton. Then it's time for them to go back to freshwater to spawn. On their way back to the breeding grounds, they have to ascend thousands of feet against the current in mountain streams. This challenging journey is called a salmon run. They set on this run because they know the stream they're headed to will be good for spawning, and they'll meet the right species to mate with. Young salmon remember the smell of their home stream and probably even take note of various points along the way to the ocean to find it again. Just like sea turtles, they use the Earth's magnetic field as a compass for their travels. Pacific salmon and most male Atlantic salmon only live for a few weeks after spawning, and some female Atlantic salmon survive and migrate back to the ocean. Caribou, better known as reindeer, are the champs when it comes to migration distance among land mammals. Every spring, they cover a distance of around 400 miles in Alaska, from their winter to their summer feeding grounds. Individuals cover up to 3,000 miles, but herd migration is way more spectacular. The largest herd has at least 260,000 members, and its migration territory covers an area larger than California. Scientists put radio tracker collars on some herd members and take thousands of photos to count them all. This census is organized every 3 years in good weather conditions to see if the population figures are rising or falling and track their migration patterns. Caribou grow through all this migration trouble to safely raise their newborn young. They reach remote grounds where golden eagles, wolves, and grizzly bears won't bother the youngsters during their first, most vulnerable days. Another good excuse to hit the road up north for them is to save themselves from mosquitoes, which would be a huge problem in warmer months. Plus, they get fresh seasonal foods from the areas they stay in. Their migration helps fertilize the grounds they pass by, which means the tundra should thank them for regenerating and protecting its grasslands. Wildebeest, also known as gnus, are relatives of antelopes and gazelles. They spend most of their lives in the Serengeti plains of southeastern Africa, grazing on the grassy savannas. Every year at the end of the rainy season, normally in May or June, millions of wildebeest head northwest in search of greener pastures, and then back again. This migration is so spectacular that it's considered one of the 7 wonders of the natural world. Sadly, not all wildebeest make it to their final destination, as they have to cross rivers full of giant crocodiles and pass by hungry lions and other predators. If you look at dragonflies' migration routes, you can call them real globetrotters. Scientists discovered one such route that spanned from India to the Maldives, Seychelles, Mozambique, Uganda, and back again for at least 8,700 miles. It's the longest insect migration we know of so far. It looks like they set on this epic journey when the temperature reaches a certain mark and the days start to grow longer. They seem to be following the rains as they start during the monsoon season in India and arrive for the rainy season in eastern and southern Africa. One fragile insect cannot complete the whole trip, so it turns into a sort of relay race that includes 4 generations of dragonflies. Each generation plays its role in the journey. Scientists can't put radio trackers on dragonflies as they do with other animals because the insects are too small. So, to put together the migration route puzzle, they analyzed 21 years of data from volunteer citizen scientists and also wing samples from museums. Each of the samples had a chemical code that could roughly tell where the insect was from. This data helped the scientists understand how far this or that insect traveled as an adult. Elephants are known to have traveled across Africa for centuries. They rely on their herd leader's memory when it comes to recalling the tricky migratory routes. This big elephant boss leads everyone else to sources of ripe food and water when the seasons change. They also migrate to avoid danger, which is mostly represented by humans. Elephants have developed their own communication methods to pass on information about prospective danger. They use chemical secretions, vibrations, gestures, and touch. Recently, many African countries have restored some of the oldest elephant migration routes. These big-eared guys usually avoid dangerous areas for generations, but once they know the route is safe, they start using it again. It was a regular dive in Australia's Great Barrier Reef for underwater photographer Christian Lane. He was taking photos of a group of male manta rays chasing a female one when suddenly he saw something that made him check if his camera strobes had been broken. There was a pink manta ray in his viewfinder. Other underwater beauties of its kind are usually black on top and white underneath. This creature Christian met that day was black on top and pink on the bottom. It turned out the photographer met Inspector Clouseau, the only known pink manta ray in the world living in the waters around Lady Elliot Island. It was named after the famous detective from Pink Panther movies. It was calm, looking at the photographer with its huge eyes. It even seemed that it was smiling at his guest, as Christian remembered in an interview. He managed to take 5 good photos of Inspector Clouseau in the 30 minutes they spent together. Divers first spotted the unique manta ray in 2015, and it was only seen less than 10 times ever since. First, the scientists thought the secret to this unusual color was in its diet. They took a sample of its skin and found out it was actually a result of a genetic mutation that caused it to express melanin differently. Many fish have it, but it usually turns them into albinos. For a regular sea creature, a combo of black, which blends with dark waters and can't be seen from above, and white, which blends with light, is ideal protection. A color mutation with pink in the picture would make other sea animals more vulnerable to predators. But a manta ray weighing as much as a car and 1.5 times taller than an average basketball player definitely has nothing to be afraid of. These creatures are born rather big and grow fast in the first few years so they can defend themselves. If you were impressed by a manta ray the shade of bubblegum, meet blue bees. These unique Australian inhabitants have turquoise stripes instead of yellow, which makes them look like flying sapphires. Their thin brown wings look like layers of cellophane with engraved patterns. Another unusual thing about them is their lifestyle. The blue-banded bees are singles. They don't move in swarms and don't live in large nests. They prefer settling in small burrows in the soil or crevices in rocks. Blue bees also have a special way of pollination. They sit on the flower, hold it tightly, and shake the whole body to make the flower move quickly and gently. Then the bees stop and collect all the pollen that goes out of the capsule inside the flower. Blue bees work for Australian agriculture, helping with tomatoes, cranberries, eggplants, blueberries, kiwi, and chili peppers. The next unique Australian animal is called the happiest on this planet. A quokka never stops smiling and looks like a live teddy bear. It's a nocturnal creature the size of a cat. It has inherited its appearance from its relative, the kangaroo. It also has a pouch, which serves as a home for its offspring for 6 months. Quokkas have a diet of grass, shrubs, and leaves. When there isn't enough food, they can use stored fat in their tails as a source of energy. They mostly live on Rottnest Island off the coast of Western Australia. Since there's no predators or traffic there, quokkas have nothing to fear and gladly come into contact with humans. It's against the law to touch them, but no one has banned taking selfies. When you look into the eyes of this cutie pie, the only question is, who on earth would call it the Tasmanian devil? Well, it wasn't that friendly to the European settlers who came to Tasmania in the early 19th century. The cutie pie greeted them with frightening growls, high-pitched screeches, and unearthly screams. They had no more doubts about how to name it when they saw its red ears and extra white jaws with sharp teeth. But when it doesn't have to defend itself, its meals, or impress a mate, the creature goes back to its cute appearance. And although these guys are the world's largest surviving carnivorous marsupials, they don't hunt their prey, but eat carrion. They're mostly active at night, but also enjoy some time in the sun, especially in the water, splashing around. Female devils have pouches to carry their offspring, and up to 4 of those fit in at the same time. Our next hero of the day is so unique that the first scientists to describe it thought they were dealing with a hoax. A platypus has a bill and webbed feet like a duck, the tail of a beaver, and the body and fur of an otter. Males also have sharp stingers with venom on the heels of their rear feet, which they can use to defend themselves from enemies. A venomous mammal is something super rare. Platypuses paddle their way through life as they hunt underwater. They can spend up to 2 minutes submerged to smell some food on the bottom. They don't have any teeth, so they use gravel to chew their lunch. Platypuses don't look that graceful as they move on land, but they can run if they really have to. Echidna is another unique Australian natural hybrid. It has porcupine-like spines, a beak much like that of a bird, a pouch like a wombat's, and lays eggs like a reptile. It feeds its offspring on milk, which just oozes out of the skin in the pouch, and the little one enjoys it. Since it has traits of both a mammal and a reptile, it got its name after a creature from Greek mythology, who was half woman and half snake. Echidnas have pretty strong snouts, which they use to break open logs and termite mounds. Their sense of smell is so good, they can smell food and danger. Their limbs are short with shovel-like claws, perfect for digging out food. Echidnas don't like the company of people or other animals, but you can still find them all over Australia, from deserts to rainforests and mountains. They are the country's most widespread native mammal. Echidnas are great swimmers, and they've been spotted crossing rivers. When the weather gets too harsh for them, they burrow into the soil or in hollow logs and burrows left by other animals. This guy, looking like a mix of a koala and a kangaroo, is a tree kangaroo. It doesn't like the company of others and hides among the trees in tropical rainforests of the mountains in Queensland, New Guinea, and nearby islands. They don't build nests and just camp on any branch they find safe. Tree kangaroos are born well prepared for this way of living, with shorter hind limbs, strong arms, and a long tail for balance to leap among the branches. They have broader feet than their ground relatives and padded soles with sharp curved claws to help them grip during climbing. Tree kangaroos are great long-distance jumpers, both between trees and from their tops. All this makes them rather clumsy when they're on the ground. The heavy tail makes them hop funnily, leaning far forward to keep balance. They also have a cool talent for moving their hind limbs independently while walking. They spend around 60% of their lives sleeping. Sounds like a dream. There are at least 12 species of this cutie, with fur colors from golden and red to black and dark brown. Did you just hear the chainsaw sound? There must be a lyrebird nearby. Those guys have the superpower of copying sounds from their surroundings. With the help of some complex muscles in its syrinx, a lyrebird can mimic camera shutters, different tools, other birds, and reportedly even human speech. It takes them up to 1 year to master this talent, and then they can use it to fool their rivals. Lyrebirds mostly hang out close to the ground and rarely fly. They got their name after the shape of their beautiful tail. It's a great mating tool as it does look like a lyre when opened.
So, we all know that Mother Nature is wise. If she blesses some creature with a particular body part, it should make perfect sense, right? Well, yeah, but still, some wildlife shots make you wonder if evolution has gone the wrong way. Snakes' natural design allows them to swallow a whole mouse. But in some cases, this cool ability can turn against them. Yes, snakes can actually swallow themselves. Scientists believe that they mostly do this because of stress, captivity, temperature regulation, hunger, or illness. The snake is pretty helpless in this situation, you can tell. If it doesn't get help in time, digestive juices may begin to corrode the swallowed tail. So if you ever catch your pet snake doing this, try to stop it, or take it to the vet. Okay, but what about the fangs, I hear you ask? Does a venomous snake have immunity to its own venom? Well, if the snake digests it, it will be okay. It's because protein is a primary component in venom. And besides, the venom is excreted by the gland in the snake's mouth. So no matter whom the snake bites, chances are that it's going to drink a bit. So the only way a snake can actually suffer from its own venom is by biting itself straight into the blood vessel. In this case, it'll experience the same reaction as any other animal. Now, think you're having a bad hair day? Hey, check this guy out. Chris was an Australian merino ram who became a celebrity in 2015 after being discovered in the wild. Farmers shorn him and gained nearly 90 pounds of wool. When the animal was found, he carried over 5 years' worth of fleece on his body. But Chris belonged to the domestic sheep breed that needs to be shorn regularly. Otherwise, the animal is at great risk of injury and infection. So the lives of these cuties depend directly on going to the hairdresser. Shall we talk about horns? Cattle, goats, and many other species proudly wear this fancy headdress not only for fashion, but also as a weapon for brutal battles. If you ask this bighorn sheep ram directly how old he is, you'll probably hear something like, "Bah." But if you want to get a more precise answer, you can count the number of rings on his horns. The biggest and the darkest ring usually marks the 4th birthday, when the ram matures enough for mating. Although animal horns may look very tough, in fact, most of them are made of keratin. It's the same protein that builds human hair and nails. Horns never stop growing as the animal ages, just like our own hair. And eventually, they can curl into really extravagant shapes, making these weapons turn against their owners. This is what a Wiltshire sheep horn looks like when it's young. But as the years go by, the horns typically curl in front of its face. And while most grow out harmlessly, the inward-growing horns can end up dangerously close to the sheep's head. Like this ram who's having bad luck, to say the least. Its horn has slowly grown into its own skull, and eventually, well, it didn't end well for the sheep. Of course, this would hardly have happened on a farm, because people would have made a preventive horn cut. But unfortunately, in the wild, animals cannot use hairdresser services. That's why they use rocks and branches to rub and grind away at their horns to keep them safe, just like humans trim their nails. Faulty genetics is not the only reason for the horn distortion. You see, when males of the species want to fight for dominance, they begin to butt heads to show each other who's the alpha male here. These battles can break horn plates, making them grow at weird and dangerous angles. The fancier the original shape of the horns is, the more problems their fracture may cause. This poor African kudu is a bright example. Fortunately, in some cases, unlimited body part growth can be good for the animal. Just take a look at these adorable smiles. If you happen to break off your own molar tooth, your dentist would probably say it's irreversible and offer a replacement. But if an alpaca breaks its front teeth, all it has to do is wait a bit. Although these animals don't have upper teeth, their lower teeth constantly grow throughout their lifetime, and they might look pretty creepy when they get too long. That's why some farmers prefer trimming them from time to time, just like pet owners cut the nails of their cats or dogs. Now, llamas look so similar to alpacas that many people confuse these two species. But the significant difference between them is that llamas' front teeth are encased in enamel. That's why, unlike alpacas, they don't possess the superpower of limited growth. Too bad. Unlike the keratin horns, deer antlers are made entirely of bone. Typically, only male deers, called stags, grow antlers. Very rarely, females can grow them too due to a serious hormone imbalance. This is a deer equivalent of a beard on a human female that sometimes can appear due to various diseases. Adult deers grow and shed their antlers annually, which coincides with the breeding season. At first, their antlers are covered in velvet, a protective skin with blood vessels. But once the antler is fully developed, the deer gets rid of the velvet, just like snakes shed their skin. Although this process doesn't harm the deer, it may look pretty spooky. Once the brand new antlers are ready, stags begin to fight with other males over the lady's attention. Usually stags barely eat or sleep during this competition. And if you ever question whether the antlers of two deers can get locked together, the answer is yes. Every stag is risking ending up stuck with his own rival instead of having a romantic night out with a female deer. Bummer. Moreover, all the traumas that the deer gets during the mating season can influence further antler growth if specific nerves get damaged. Just like horns, antlers can develop at distorted angles because of genetic failures. Some mutations can even make them grow monstrously large. This unlucky deer can barely move his head without losing balance. Also, if a deer breaks one of its legs, its body can speed up the healing by sacrificing the bone and blood material from one of the antlers, and thus this antler will get thinner and weaker. And speaking of facial extensions, we cannot skip the tusks. Please meet Babirusa from Indonesia. This ancient boar first emerged over 35,000 years ago. It's easy to confuse these big tusks with horns, but they are actually upper canines. They tend to pierce through the skin of the boar's face as it matures. Scientists believe that these intimidating tusks have evolved as a tool to protect eyes and throat while fighting with other males during mating season. But this design doesn't seem very thoughtful. If a male boar doesn't grind his tusks regularly, they can end up curling back into his own skull, which can blind him or even worse. Now, what if I told you that hoofs can grow out of control just like horns and antlers? It took evolution millions of years to turn the middle toe of the animal's foot bone into the hoof. And just like toenails, they tend to grow and curl into creepy shapes if they aren't cut regularly. When donkeys or horses don't have a chance to wear down their hoofs naturally by walking on hard surfaces, they tend to overgrow. This makes the animals walk on the balls of their feet and overstretch the tendons, which may result in pain and bone loss. And eventually, they can lose the ability to walk at all. So if you ever come across a horse with curly hooves, consider calling the experts to give it an emergency manicure. Perhaps one of the most obvious questions regarding the undersea world is, can a fish drown in the water? Yup, it can. Although gills are an amazing gift of nature, there are still many factors that may deprive a fish of healthy breathing. When the oxygen level in the water is too low, fish begin to suffocate. But it happens very rarely in the wild. Oxygen deficit usually appears in aquariums that are not washed and replenished often enough. Also, parasites, diseases, and an overall imbalance in water components can cause the fish to drown. And on that note, I need to hoof it on out of here. See you next time. That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.